I found my wife taking a bath with her male assistant. On my wife's birthday, I rushed back from another city overnight. But the person who opened the door was the male assistant wearing my bathrobe. Boss Lu, I came here to report to Boss Jiang. I accidentally got caught in the rain, so I took a shower. Don't get me wrong. What's there to explain? My wife, who was also wearing a bathrobe, walked out of the bathroom with a look of disdain on her face and looked at me with disgust. Aren't you on a business trip? Why are you back? I was silent for a moment, then shook my head and chuckled. Nothing, just came back to get some documents. I threw my carefully selected birthday present into the trash and sent a message to my lawyer. Help me draft a divorce agreement. 1. The two of them were so intimate as if no one was around, not caring at all that I was standing next to them. I walked into the study with an expressionless face. When I came out with the documents, the two of them were already lying on the sofa hugging each other. An assistant Xu Juan's hand had already reached under the hem of my wife's bathrobe. After seeing me come out, he pulled it out reluctantly and even put it under his nose and sniffed it provocatively. Then he said to me with an intoxicated look on his face, "Excuse me, Mr. Lu, Ms. Jiang said she just took a shower and was a little cold, so I helped her warm up, please don't misunderstand." What a ridiculous excuse. Without waiting for me to say anything, my wife Jiang Yang glared at me impatiently. Aren't you here to get the documents? Now that you have them, why don't you leave quickly? Do you really need me to chase you away? I just felt my breath was suffocated. Since when did she become like this? I remember when we first got married, even if I was going on a long trip, she would give me all kinds of instructions and reluctantly see me off all the way to the airport. But now, even when I just pick up a document, she thinks I'm procrastinating. Okay, I'll be leaving right away. I turned around and was about to leave, but Xu Juan suddenly challenged me. Mr. Lu, remember to close the door. I'm afraid the noise will disturb the neighbors. I frowned and turned to stare at him. After a long time, I laughed. You guys should be more careful, this sofa is quite expensive. It was obviously me who started the provocation first, but as soon as I said this, he looked aggrieved. Mr. Lu, you misunderstood. I'm going to help Mr. Jiang with his fitness, so. Jiang Yang's face was also full of anger. Lu Ziming, what do you mean by this? It's just a joke, why are you so excited? I laughed it off, but in fact I was in great pain inside. Qin Yang gave me a fierce look. If you have any objections, just come to me. It's no use picking on Juan all the time. Xu Juan quickly stood up and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Jiang, please don't quarrel because of me. It's my fault. I'm leaving now. Need not. Jiang Yang pressed him to her chest and then looked at me coldly. Can you not do it every day? You're causing trouble for me just by getting a document. Aren't you annoying? I looked at him, and finally turned away with a blank expression. The moment the door closed behind me, I felt a dull pain in my chest. The pain was so severe that I couldn't help but bend down and breathe deeply. 5 years. In just 5 years, the relationship between my wife and I has gone from being very close in the beginning to what it is today. Is marriage really the grave of love? After a long time, I came to my senses, ignored the moans coming from inside the door, and strode away. When I arrived at the airport, I received a message from Jiang Yang. Look at yourself, what do you look like? Juan came to report to me on a rainy day. What's wrong with me caring about him? As a man, can't you be more generous? I stared at my phone in a daze, and before I could reply, she called me impatiently. Are you blind if I send you a message? Hurry up and apologize to Juan. He's so angry at you that he's lost all his mood. On the other end of the phone, Xu Juan sighed pretentiously, I'm sorry, sister, I'm really hurt. Taking a deep breath, I tried to calm myself down. Just have fun. 2. This is not the first time this has happened. Ever since Xu Juan entered the company and was specially recruited by Jiang Yang as an assistant, her heart began to unconditionally lean towards this big boy in his early 20s. Every time I had a conflict with Xu Juan because of their excessive contact, she always took sides, and in the end the situation usually ended with me apologizing to Xu Juan. Half a month ago, I needed to discuss work matters with her. But as soon as I entered the door, I saw 2 people walking out of the lounge in disheveled clothes. Through the gap between the 2 people, I could clearly see that the bed in the lounge was messy, and it was obvious that something had happened. You know, normally, even I, your legal husband, cannot go into this lounge to take a rest. I stood there in a daze, wanting to get angry, but when the words came to my lips, I couldn't find the words to speak. Facing my puzzled look, Xu Juan smiled easily. Don't get me wrong, Mr. Liu, Ms. Jiang is too tired from work and her spine is uncomfortable, so I just gave her a massage. I also wanted to avoid misunderstanding, but we were alone in a room with a man and a woman, the bed was messy and the clothes were untidy. It's easy to be misunderstood no matter how you look at it, right? Afterwards, I also mentioned this matter to Jiang Yang in a vague way. I said that she was a married woman after all, and should keep some distance from the opposite sex. But Jiang Yang became furious after hearing this. What do you mean? I work so hard every day and Juan is so kind to give me a massage, but why does it taste so bad when it comes out of your mouth? You have nothing else in your mind except that yellow crap every day, right? I couldn't help but retort. What do I mean? You two are alone in a room together, is it appropriate to tell others about it? Jiang Yang became even angrier and started smashing things, saying that I was doubting her. A fierce quarrel broke out between us. From her behavior at that time, I suspected that she must be hiding something. Otherwise I wouldn't be so excited. But I had no evidence, and I still had feelings for her. As time went by, I pretended nothing had happened. The project was not finalized until the day before I went on a business trip to inspect the site. To celebrate, the company held a banquet for me. During the dinner, Xu Juan got drunk, and Jiang Yang, as my wife, not only did not think about taking care of me, but instead sat next to Xu Juan and blocked his drinking in various ways. When my colleagues saw this scene, they all looked at me. Some laughed at me, but most showed sympathy. In response, I pretended to turn a blind eye and continued to warmly invite everyone to eat and drink. I don't know if it was because of my indulgence, but after the party, Jiang Yang took the initiative to offer to take Xu Juan home and did not come back all night. When he returned home early the next morning, he explained to me that he had only taken care of her for one night and nothing had happened. But the missing stockings on her legs and the dense kiss marks on her chest all hinted at the fierce battle last night. But I still chose to ignore it. I comforted myself by thinking that maybe it was just a mosquito bite. But everything that happened tonight made me feel like an idiot. Believe again and again, forgive again and again. What we got in return was not understanding, but it became even worse. She actually took her lover back home. That was the wedding house that she and I worked hard to buy when we got married. It is a love nest that symbolizes our love. She actually brought other men to stay with her. No matter how stupid I am, I can't convince myself at this moment that they are really nothing. At the beginning, from dating to marriage, in this long relationship, I was always the one who gave in. After all, there will always be friction and quarrels in a relationship. In a couple, someone has to be willing to take a step back. Since she doesn't want to, I'll do it. But my repeated concessions only made her become more and more demanding. In that case, there is no need to retreat. I chose to leave. 3. Jiang Yang and I met in college. She was a well-known figure in the school at that time. Since her parents divorced early, she grew up with her mother. Maybe because she was busy with work, her mother was not strict with her and just gave her an ample material life. This also makes her become unruly, willful, and unreasonable, and almost no one is willing to get close to such a character. Including me. Since he is a person that even teachers find trouble with, of course I stay away from him. But I don't know why, maybe it's because everyone thinks I'm a good student with both good character and good academic performance. Jiang Yang has set her sights on me. Not only does he ask me out for dinner in various ways every day. He would even take me for a ride on weekends, and he never failed to give me gifts during various holidays. Although I declined them all, she remained persistent. I also asked her the reason. Her answer was, because you're a good person. Others either despise me or covet my money, but you are different. I just want a normal friend. The loneliness at that moment made my heart ache. I thought, maybe everyone misunderstood her. Her stubbornness and willfulness were just a layer of armor with spikes covering herself. But in fact, she is also soft inside. Longing for contact with others. Thinking of this, I smiled and nodded at her. Well then, from today on, I am your friend. By the way, call me. Jiang Yang smiled. It was the first time I realized that a girl could look so beautiful while crying while smiling. From that day on, we became best friends. We study together, go to the library, and walk in the playground. She would also take me out of school to go racing, horseback riding, and ice skating. My friends thought I was crazy, and even my teachers advised me to stay away from such bad students. Everyone thinks that Jiang Yang is just playing with me and will get bored of me after having enough fun. But I can see that she really wants to take me with her. The more I interact with her, the more I feel sorry for her. Although she is rich, she is lonely. I have been without a father since I was a child, and I don't even have a true friend around me. She deserves to be loved. For her, I even gave up my qualification for continued study and graduated with her. Jiang Yang was very grateful and invited me to work in her mother's company. It was also during this opportunity that I met her mother, the famous strong woman. In her villa, Mother Jiang held my hand, tears streaming down her face. Xiaolu, thank you for always being with Xiao Yang. She has really changed a lot. I can see that she likes you very much. I am an incompetent mother. Please stay with her. I just want her to be happy. She is a great mother. I can't resist a mother's concern for her daughter. Plus, I do have a crush on Jiang Yang. So I accepted her invitation and stayed in her company. But later I found out that Jiang's mother had been diagnosed with advanced liver cancer. He knew that he didn't have much time left, but the only thing he was worried about was his beloved daughter. When she was dying, she called me to her bedside, held my hand, and repeatedly begged me to treat her daughter well. Only after I agreed did she pass away with a smile on her face. In order to fulfill the promise I made to Jiang's mother, I married Jiang Yang. Jiang Yang doesn't like busy work. In name, she is the president, but in reality, I am the one who handles almost all the company's affairs. I was willing to work hard and never complain about this. After all, I really loved her to the core at that time. Every time I worked overtime late at night and was exhausted, she would give me a gentle massage and act coquettishly in my ears. Thank you for your hard work, husband Tilder. While pressing, she comforted me, it's okay, honey. When you can't do it anymore, I will protect you. I will never let anyone hurt you. But now, she herself has become the one who hurt me the most. 4. It was already half a month later when I returned from my business trip. The company held a welcoming banquet for me. At the dinner table, Xu Juan, who arrived late, sat down very naturally next to Jiang Yang, in the empty seat specially reserved for him. The originally lively atmosphere suddenly cooled down. Everyone was silent, all eyes fell on me. In the past, I would have been furious. But now, I just smiled and found an empty seat to sit down. From beginning to end, I didn't say a word of nonsense. Everyone present, except the two of them, breathed a sigh of relief. But they needn't have worried. Because of this time on the business trip, I have figured it out. I don't care anymore. Just as everyone was calling for drinks, Xu Juan suddenly stood up. Mr. Lu, you are worthy of being the pillar of the company. You have at least half the credit for the success of this cooperation. I toast you with this glass of wine. Thank you for bringing such a huge profit to the company. After saying that, he raised his head and drank it all in one gulp. I did it, you can do whatever you want. I sat in the chair, with no intention of moving. Jiang Yang was unhappy when she saw this. Juan toasted you, but you held your glasses and didn't move. Are you denying face to him or me? I took a calm look. Are you covering up for one's shortcomings? I just took cefuroxime and can't drink alcohol. Who are you kidding? Jiang Yang didn't believe it. You knew there was a welcoming banquet today, so you took cefuroxime on purpose, right? I sighed, feeling extremely tired of her unreasonable behavior. Picking up the chopsticks and just about to eat something to fill her stomach, Jiang Yang slammed the table. You're deaf, aren't you? The box suddenly became quiet, and you could hear a pin drop. Everyone looked at us nervously and awkwardly, not daring to breathe. Just then, Xu Juan spoke. Hey, Mr. Jiang, don't be angry. He stood up and walked towards me with the drink. Boss Lu, you have to drink this glass of wine today, whether you want to or not. I am sincerely apologizing to you, you can't let me lose face, right? I looked up and gave him a look with a smile. I took cefuroxime. Don't you understand what I'm saying? After saying that, I raised my hand and knocked over the wine glass he handed to me. The wine immediately spilled all over him. This time, Jiang Yang was completely upset. Are you crazy? Jiang Yang rushed over. Do you think you can be fearless just because you have negotiated a project? Are you confident? I shook my head and chuckled. Think what you like. My attitude made her feel even more provoked. She raised her hand, picked up the bottle of wine beside her, poured a full glass of wine, and handed it to me. You don't drink Juwen's toast, but you can't refuse my wine, right? Her eyes were like knives and her tone was full of threats. If you don't want to drink, pack up and get out right now. Starting tomorrow, you don't have to come to the company. The crowd was shocked. Everyone knows that I have played an indispensable role in keeping this company going today. Unfortunately, Jiang Yang didn't seem to see this clearly. Faced with her aggressiveness, I smiled and took out the resignation letter that I had prepared long ago in front of everyone. I don't drink. This is a letter of resignation. Starting tomorrow, I will no longer be working with you. 5. After hearing what I said, Jiang Yang was stunned, her eyes full of disbelief. Maybe she thought that I would choose to compromise this time, just like in the past. Will choose to give in. Pity. Remember to sign, otherwise it will be ugly in the end. I spoke hoarsely, standing up to leave. Xu Juwen grabbed my arm. Boss Lu, why are you doing this? Boss Jiang was just joking with you, why are you so angry? Get lost. I shook his hand off. Other colleagues also came forward to dissuade him. Boss Lu, why make such a fuss on such a happy day? That's right. You and Mr. Jiang are husband and wife. Is there anything you can't talk about? Before I could even open my mouth, Jiang Yang scolded me with a cold face. Don't stop him. Let him go. Do you think I'll be scared if you threaten me? Xu Juwen started pretending to be a good guy again and came forward to pull me. Mr. Lu, don't be like this. He moved closer to me and suddenly lowered his voice, his tone sarcastic. Your wife is so smooth. I was immediately furious and pushed him away, but there was a glimmer of pride in his eyes. Oops. Xu Juwen screamed and fell to the ground. Seeing this, Jiang Yang was so angry that her whole body was shaking. She rushed over and pushed me away. Are you going to die today? Everyone get out. At her command, everyone immediately breathed a sigh of relief and left quickly. Even Xu Juwen, who wanted to stay, was kicked out. When we were the only two left in the room, Jiang Yang looked gloomy. What on earth do you want to do? Do you want to embarrass me in front of so many people? I couldn't help but sneer. You also know how to lose face. Why didn't you think about these when you embarrassed me? Jiang Yang frowned, as if she had thought of something, and spoke in a dissatisfied tone. It's because of Juwen again. Didn't I tell you that there's really nothing between him and me? Can you please stop being so petty? In an instant, the taut string in my mind completely broke. The pent-up emotions burst out at this moment. Yes. I am petty. I yelled at her. I can't stand my wife having an affair with another man all the time. I can't stand the idea of a man showing up at my house in my bathrobe and making eyes at my wife. I can't stand a pretty boy provoking me all the time. I let out all the words that had been accumulating in my heart for a long time. But I didn't feel any pleasure at all. Instead, my heart became more depressed and painful. Sure enough, when you open an unhealed scar, it only causes more blood to flow. Jiang Yang was stunned. It seemed as if he hadn't expected me to explode suddenly. After a long silence, she slowly spoke. I thought you didn't mind. I sneered. Don't mind. As long as you are a normal person with normal thinking, you will not be affected by this kind of thing. He was openly kissing another man with his beloved wife. All unacceptable. Not to mention whether you mind or not. No man would not mind. Except me. I don't mind it now. Because my heart has been broken into pieces by repeated disappointments. Or, I no longer love you. I took a deep breath and gave her a bitter smile. I'm sorry, I lost my temper. I will give you the divorce agreement after a while, remember to sign it. 6. Jiang Yang's chest heaved, her eyes filled with anger and disbelief. Do you know what you are talking about? I took a deep breath and nodded. Jiang Yang, let's get a divorce. After saying this, I suddenly felt that the feeling of boredom and depression in my heart disappeared. The thought of divorce has occurred to me before, but now I can finally say it out loud. Jiang Yang stared at me. After a long time, she seemed to have thought of something, and a sneer suddenly appeared at the corner of her mouth. You are just a small sales manager in my company. Without me, who would be interested in a piece of trash like you? Waste. This sentence tore open the already broken heart again. I smiled bitterly, shook my head, not wanting to waste any more words, and turned away. Don't forget how you begged me to marry you. If you get divorced, you'd better not regret it. Jiang Yang's voice sounded from behind. She went to accompany Xu Juan and stayed there for a whole week. I packed up all the things in my house and asked a courier to send them away. He also called out to some of his good friends for a drink. When my friends learned about my plan, they expressed their blessings. After all, everyone had seen all the grievances I had suffered in the company over the years. After eating and drinking, I returned home with a groggy head. Lying on the sofa, I saw their wedding photos hanging on the wall at a glance. Just then, Jiang Yangshan posted a message on her moments. In the photo, she and Xu Juan are hugging and kissing, their faces full of happiness and sweetness. Congratulations, my boy, you made it ashore. I sighed, turned off my phone, and placed the divorce agreement I had prepared in advance on the dining table. The next morning, I went to the company to complete my resignation. To put it bluntly, it's just a formality. In this company, the little power I had was long gone. So when the HR director received my resignation application, he approved it without even asking any questions. After the incident, she even called me hypocritically. It's a pity, Mr. Liu, we were still thinking about eating your and Mr. Jiang's wedding candy. Listening to her sarcastic tone, I didn't feel the slightest bit of emotion and replied with a smile, don't worry, you'll be able to eat it soon. After hanging up the phone, Jiang Yang called me before I even walked out of the company gate. You've got enough. I have rejected your resignation application. That's enough for you. Otherwise, I will make sure you don't get a penny. Get out of Su Group. I smiled coldly. After 7 years of love, could it be that she is really a gigolo who is greedy for wealth and can be manipulated by money? It's up to you. I don't care. After saying that, I blocked her and deleted her. The world suddenly became quiet. I submitted my resignation again, and this time Jiang Yang agreed very readily. After receiving the resignation letter, I left the company without looking back. 7. Before leaving, the company's vice president called. Boss Liu, are you really going to resign? Yes. The vice president became excited. What about the project? You know, President Jiang never cares about anything. If this project fails, it will be a fatal blow to the company. Can you wait until the project is implemented? Excuse me. I sighed. I have already got the project. As for how and when to do it, it is up to you. But the company doesn't belong to just one person. It can continue without anyone. I interrupted him. The vice president hesitated for a long time and finally sighed deeply. In short, Mr. Liu, I always feel very lucky to work with you. I hope we will have the opportunity to cooperate again in the future. I didn't react at all, just responded with a few perfunctory words. Since I have decided to resign, I have no intention of having anything to do with this company that belongs to Jiang Yang. I slept very peacefully that night. There is no need to worry about whether Jiang Yang is feeling unwell after socializing, nor is there any need to worry about her mood. There is no need to worry about the company's affairs, big or small. Early in the morning, I was awakened by a burst of urgent ringing. When the call was connected, Jiang Yang's angry accusations came from the receiver. Liu Ziming. What's wrong with you? The project you are responsible for will be signed in a few days, you'd better be on site on time. I shook my head and came to my senses. I suppressed my impatience and held the phone away. After she finally finished scolding me, I slowly said, Boss Jiang is really a noble man who forgets things easily. If I remember correctly, I resigned yesterday, and you agreed to it. So what does the project you mentioned have to do with me? Liu Ziming. Jiang Yang suddenly raised her voice, her tone full of anger and warning. I'm warning you, don't force me to use any tricks. Although I agree to your resignation, the handover procedures have not been completed. If you don't come, I have the right to sue you directly. I just didn't buy it, and replied coldly, don't try to use this to pressure me. If you had read my resignation application carefully, you wouldn't be talking nonsense to me here. After saying that, I hung up the phone. I packed my luggage and prepared to say goodbye to the house where I had lived for 5 years. As soon as I went out, Jiang Yang's car came speeding from a distance. After getting off the bus, she frowned when she saw the suitcase in my hand. "Why are you packing? Where are you going?" I didn't show any expression and said in a very calm tone, "Go out and relax." Jiang Yang frowned even more tightly and kept muttering to herself. "It's already this late, and you're still in the mood to go traveling. I see you really don't want to do this anymore, right? You'll report to the company this afternoon, and there's a lot of things you need to take care of." "Okay, I got it." I nodded, but my heart was full of sarcasm. Her face is above all else, right? The belief in my heart has become stronger. If you don't have much affection, you might as well throw it away early. Jiang Yan walked in on her own and came out after a few minutes with a document. "You're at home all day long, don't you know how to clean up? It's such a mess." After scolding her a few times, she left without looking back. I knew in my heart that she probably didn't even notice the divorce agreement on the table. Her mind was not on this house, so she wouldn't notice anything extra. I stood there and watched her drive away silently. It seemed that even God couldn't bear to watch this. At this moment, the sky suddenly darkened, and strong winds brought heavy rain, trying in vain to cleanse this love that was full of filth and mud. What bad luck! I didn't think there was anything romantic about this sudden heavy rain, so I opened my umbrella and slowly left. 8. The plane landed at dusk. The sunset is beautiful, stretching out dreamy colors in the sky. I had just walked out of the airport when a man in light-colored sportswear came towards me. "Hello, Mr. Lu Ziming? I was sent by the company to pick you up. Thank you for your help. Also, just call me by my name." I nodded and thanked the girl sincerely. "Har har har, okay brother Ziming, my name is Su Zishuan, and I will be your work assistant from now on. Please give me your guidance." Su Zishuan stretched out her hand, her crescent-shaped eyes were full of ripples, making it very easy for people to get close to her. This attitude makes me feel a little restrained. My hands are a little numb from sitting. "Why don't we go have a meal together?" I smiled and changed the subject. Su Zishuan stuck out her tongue and didn't care. "Okay." I chose a nearby restaurant. When Su Zishuan got up to go to the bathroom, Jiang Yang called. I hung up the phone. But she was very persistent. I picked up the phone slowly, and immediately heard Jiang Yang's angry voice from the other end. "Lu Ziming, what do you mean? Why didn't you come to today's meeting? If you leave the Su group, you will be nothing but a rat crossing the street." I said calmly, "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Jiang. I don't know where she gets her confidence from. She was able to gain the trust of shareholders and achieve her current position thanks to whom? It was because of my drinking and socializing all night long that I was able to get so many projects. Now that we're separated, with the little salary she gives me, I can easily find a job in any company." She was silent for a while, her tone calm but indifferent. "Think about it carefully. It's you who wants to leave. I won't give you any more financial compensation." "Stop." I interrupted her. I wanted to resign on my own initiative. According to the labor contract, I will get what I deserve. Maybe my tone was too bland. Jiang Yang on the other end of the phone started to get angry, and there was a hint of sarcasm in her tone. "Lu Ziming, you need to think it over carefully. You are not a young man anymore. In the final analysis, you just don't know yourself well. It is because I took you in that you are in your current position. Now it seems that I have given you too much face. It is not too late for you to regret it now. Otherwise, when you end up begging on the streets, don't blame me for not reminding you." "Ridiculous." I sneered, too lazy to waste time with her. "You are the one who should recognize yourself." Her eyes always stay on her own position. Feeling that she has achieved something, she starts to criticize from a high ground. Perhaps only when she calms down and reflects on how the company's cooperation came about, she will feel regretful. "I've put the divorce agreement on the table, just remember to sign it." Jiang Yang's tone turned cold. "You have to have a limit when you joke. My patience is limited." Even now, she still thinks that the so-called divorce I mentioned was just a temper tantrum. "I'm not kidding you." Looking at Su Zishuan, who had returned from washing her hands, my tone calmed down. "I already have a new job and I won't be going back. Don't contact me unless you get a divorce." Jiang Yang screamed angrily, You changed jobs. Why didn't you discuss it with me? Don't you want this family anymore? Home? I couldn't help but laugh at myself. In the past 2 years, I have been alone in that so-called home most of the time. I was tired of waiting for Jiang Yang to come home all night long. Tired of tossing and turning all night long and unable to sleep. Hasn't that home already disappeared from your heart? Jiang Yang, stop pestering me. If I were you, I would have agreed to a divorce long ago. Jiang Yang's tone was cold. After 5 years of marriage, you just want to divorce me. What do you think of me? Are you really worthy of me by being so decisive? You are not a man at all. Jiang Yang's tone at this moment was like that of a scoundrel and a shrew. She was reluctant to give up the excitement brought by the affair, but also didn't want to let go of me, a dedicated full-time nanny. I sighed and simply hung up the phone, not wanting to have any more meaningless arguments. This marriage must be divorced. No matter how much she objects, it is meaningless. What's wrong? Su Zishuan sat back in her seat, probably noticing that I looked unhappy, so she asked with concern. Nothing. I put my phone down. Although there was such a small episode, the atmosphere became lively again with Su Zishuan's lively and humorous conversation. The two talked a lot about the branch and future work. During this time, my phone kept vibrating. There was no doubt that it was Jiang Yang who called, along with all kinds of questioning messages. I turned off my phone, out of sight, out of mind. In the next few days, I immersed myself in work and tried to integrate into the team as quickly as possible. After all, although we all belong to the same company, we have never worked together before, and some details still need to be worked out slowly. Fortunately, the colleagues here are very friendly, and I am also capable, so soon the whole team developed a good understanding. Colleagues also welcome this quiet and humble person. Occasionally, after get off work, he would organize various dinner parties and invite me to his home. Su Zishuan participates most of the time. She is a lively and active girl who always brings joy to others. So I like to take her with me. During this period, my relationship with her gradually became familiar with each other. 9. After a night of joy, Xu Juan fell into a deep sleep. But Jiang Yang just stared at the ceiling and couldn't fall asleep. After Lu Ziming announced the divorce that day, she rushed back home and found the divorce agreement on the table. The content is very simple, the two divorced and he was left with nothing. But such simple content dealt a heavy blow to Jiang Yang's self-esteem. Why could Lu Ziming give up on himself so calmly? She felt that if she just left him alone for a few days, he would come to her and beg her to get back together with him, just like before. But after so many days, he didn't make any movement at all. Are you really angry? Jiang Yang picked up the phone and looked at the dialogue box between the two. She didn't know when the way they talked to each other changed. In the past, Lu Ziming always talked incessantly and at length. But her own response was very cold, either or oh. Or just don't reply. But I don't know when the way they chat with each other changed. Every time she sent a long article, Lu Ziming's response was either okay or I know. No more complaints like before. Jiang Yang clicked on the chat avatar, and there was nothing in Lu Ziming's circle of friends, only a horizontal line. Something is wrong. She sat up suddenly and sent a message quickly in the chat box. The red exclamation mark is so glaring. Jiang Yang's eyes widened in disbelief. She took out her address book and called Lu Ziming in panic. Sorry, the number you dialed is unavailable. Jiang Yang put down her phone blankly. Impossible, how is it possible, why would he block me? Jiang Yang felt her forehead buzzing. At this point, even if she had never taken it seriously, she had to believe it. Lu Ziming really planned to divorce her. Feeling the cold, Xu Juan opened his eyes dazedly. Seeing Jiang Yang staring at her phone in a daze, he pulled her into his arms, kneading the fullness of her breasts, leaning close to her neck and speaking ambiguous words. Sister Yang Yang, why aren't you sleeping? Is it because your brother hasn't satisfied you yet? Hearing the ambiguous words, Jiang Yang did not feel emotional as before, but instead felt inexplicably irritated. Sister is really unsatisfied, then brother will satisfy you once again. After saying that, Xu Juan turned over and pressed her under him, rubbing his nose against her chest. A few days ago, he overheard the phone call between Jiang Yang and Lu Ziming. The crumpled divorce agreement was also found in Jiang Yang's bag. He knew that he was going to be promoted. This beautiful and powerful woman would eventually belong to him. Thinking of this, Xu Juwen couldn't help but hum and laugh, muttering unconsciously. It's good now. Now that the old man in your family is gone, we can be together forever. His hands gently spread Jiang Yang's legs apart, but the latter dodged aside as if she had been electrocuted. Without waiting for him to ask, the bedside lamp was turned on, and Jiang Yang stared at him coldly, her eyes full of horror. What do you mean? Do you know where Ziming went? Xu Juwen stammered, yes, I heard you making a phone call that day, so. He didn't understand. Jiang Yang had always said that she had no feelings for him, so why did she not look so happy after he left? Facing Jiang Yang's cold gaze, Xu Juwen hesitated and said, Sister, don't you still love him? After saying this, Xu Juwen himself felt it was absurd. Impossible. Jiang Yang is beautiful and charming, and she is also a strong woman who is one in a million. In contrast, I am just an ordinary person, and even my handsome face has become more weathered over the years. What's more, Jiang Yang has satisfied his various ridiculous requests countless times. In Xu Juwen's opinion, he is the person Jiang Yang truly loves the most. Jiang Yang had no intention of explaining and said coldly, You'd better not interfere in my affairs. Then he put on his clothes, slammed the door and left. Xu Juwen sat on the bed with a gloomy face. Damn Lu Ziming. He wished he could skin Lu Ziming alive. He must have done it on purpose. Do you want to run away from home to make Jiang Yang leave you? 10. Jiang Yang looked in many places and consulted many people, but no one knew where Lu Ziming had gone. Sitting in the office, Jiang Yang looked lonely. Just then, the phone rang and she looked down. It's Xu Juwen calling. She hung up the phone right away. But the phone rang again and she hung up again. When it rang for the third time, Jiang Yang could no longer bear it. Is this ever going to end? The person on the other end of the phone was startled by her and trembled with fear for a long time. Excuse me, Miss Jiang, I have a package for you. Is it convenient for you to sign for it now? Express delivery? Jiang Yang frowned. Yes, I'm at the door of your villa now. Is it convenient for you to sign for it? I'm not free right now. Okay, I'll contact you tomorrow. Wait. Jiang Yang suddenly remembered something. Who sent it? Yes, Mr. Lu Ziming. Jiang Yang stood up suddenly and scolded harshly. I'll be back now, wait for me. Jiang Yang ran red lights all the way. But at the gate of the community, she met a courier who was on his way out. Where's my delivery? The courier was startled by her pulling him, and hesitantly said, Your husband has already signed for you. He just took it in. Husband? Jiang Yang frowned. My husband is not at home at all. The gentleman just now claimed to be your husband. Jiang Yang raised her eyebrows and strode straight into the door. Xu Juwen. Where is he? Xu Juwen, who was in the bathroom, was frightened. He threw the things in his hand into the toilet and pressed the flush button desperately. The next second, the bathroom door was kicked open. She snatched the box from Xu Juwen's hand. It was filled with photos. From her youthful days in college, she gradually grew into a mature and sexy woman. She looks like in her school uniform. The look of running in the sun in sportswear. Wearing formal clothes, looking serious at work. There is also the image of him wearing home clothes and wielding a spatula. It was taken by Lu Ziming. Some she knew, some she didn't know at all. These were all taken secretly by Lu Ziming accidentally. She never knew that Lu Ziming's photography skills were so good. Every photo was taken with love, and her whole body was coated with a layer of golden halo. His love almost overflows from the camera. Jiang Yang's hands were shaking as she flipped through the pages more and more. As she read, tears began to fall from the corners of her eyes. When she turned to the last page, Jiang Yang was stunned. That was a photo of her and Xu Juwen lying on the bed. There was a sudden stab in her heart, and the pain was unbearable. She pressed her chest and the photo slipped from her fingertips. It was then that she saw words written on the back of the photo. It's Lu Ziming's handwriting. Jiang Yang, have you ever felt sorry for me? Jiang Yang was stunned and picked up the other photos in a panic. There is writing on the back of each one. Jiang Yang, you are very serious and beautiful when you work. Jiang Yang, I love you. Wife, I took a secret photo of you again. If you see it later, will you blame me? Jiang Yang. This one only has half a page, with only the two words, Jiang Yang, on it. Jiang Yang grabbed Xu Zhiwen's hand angrily. Where's the other half? Sister, don't do this, you scared me. I'm asking you, where's the other half? Speak. Xu Zhiwen was furious and pointed at the toilet. I tore it into pieces and flushed it away. Bang. Jiang Yang slapped him hard on the face. Elder sister. Xu Zhiwen's eyes were full of shock and anger. Didn't you say you didn't love him anymore? Why do you still cling to these things? I destroyed these photos so that he would no longer affect you. Get out of here. I am the one you love, sister. Even though Lu Ziming is not here, you still have me. He stood up from the ground and tried to hold Jiang Yang in his arms. But Jiang Yang took a step back, her eyes full of disgust and warning. Don't make me say it a second time, get out. Elder sister. Roll. Xu Zhiwen knew that Jiang Yang was extremely angry at the moment, so he quickly changed the subject. Well, then I'll go to the kitchen and make you something to eat, you. Jiang Yang stared at him intently, and said word by word, get out of my and Ziming's house. 11. During my time in the company, I discovered that Su Zishuan's identity seemed not simple. Not to mention that she has the same surname as the big boss. You can guess something from the respectful attitude of her colleagues towards her. And maybe because of work, Su Zishuan would always be around in front of him. They will even take the initiative to suggest having dinner together and going home together. This also caused some rumors in the company. Some colleagues asked me indirectly about the relationship between the two. I have explained it to them, but the ambiguous looks in their eyes clearly showed that they didn't believe it. Although there was no malicious speculation, it made me feel a little uncomfortable. For this reason, I can only try to keep my distance from Su Zishuan. Over time, Su Zishuan also discovered something unusual. When I got off work, Su Zishuan blocked me at the office door. Lu Ziming, why are you hiding from me? I looked away. Miss Su, you misunderstood. Don't call me Miss Su, call me Zishuan. Su Zishuan stomped her feet, somewhat dissatisfied. I was a little at a loss. For a moment, the atmosphere was a little awkward. I didn't breathe a sigh of relief until my cell phone rang rapidly. Without even looking at it, he answered the call directly. Lu Ziming, I'm at your company, where are you? Jiang Yang's voice came from the receiver. I was stunned. My company. Jiang Yang's voice was full of sarcasm. You thought I wouldn't be able to find you if you moved to another city, right? Jiang Yang didn't know how she had managed to get through those 8 hours. She learned where Lu Ziming was going from his friends. At first, she was very excited. But soon, she was enveloped by a huge anger. Why did he leave without saying a word? My brows were furrowed. In my impression, Jiang Yang is not a person who is always nagging. Su Zishuan was puzzled when she saw this. What's wrong? On the other end of the phone, Jiang Yang heard the woman's voice and immediately became dissatisfied. Me? Who are you with? I took a deep breath and said, it doesn't matter who I'm with. I told you, if it's not about divorce, don't come to me. After saying that, I hung up the phone. Su Zishuan's eyes were filled with shock. Are you getting a divorce? Yes. I didn't mean to hide it. As you can see, I'm an emotional failure. I don't deserve to be liked. Su Zishuan showed distress on her face, and she shook her head stubbornly. I think you are very good, but that woman doesn't know how to cherish you. While the two were talking, a noisy sound was heard outside. Lu Ziming. Come out and see me. 12. I frowned and just walked out of the office. I saw Jiang Yang making a big fuss in the company. The security guard followed her, looking embarrassed, and kept trying to persuade her. I'm going to call the police if you do this. Call the police. I'm here to find my husband. Why do you call the police? Jiang Yang acted like a madman. Fortunately, the company was already off work and not many people saw this fuss. As I walked out the door, Jiang Yang also noticed him. Seeing that there was a pretty girl standing next to him, Jiang Yang's face suddenly turned cold and she walked over quickly. Have you had enough of the trouble? Come home with me. She reached out and grabbed my arm. I frowned and pushed her away. You're going too far. I'm overdoing it. Jiang Yang's beautiful face was distorted by anger. You ran away from home without saying a word and left behind a divorce agreement. Who is going too far? Come back with me right now, or don't blame me for being rude. At this moment, Su Zishuan suddenly stood between the two of them. Who are you, auntie? Aunt? Jiang Yang's eyes widened, anger suddenly rising to her head. Who are you? Who I am has nothing to do with you. You came to our company and made a scene for no reason. That's why I should ask you who you are, right? The two girls looked at each other and the atmosphere suddenly became tense. Lu Ziming, come home with me. Jiang Yang's eyes skipped over Su Zishuan in front of her, and her tone was commanding and impatient. He is the project manager of our company. Why should he go with you? Jiang Yang looked at Su Zishuan, who had provoked her again and again, her face as cold as iron. He is my husband. If he doesn't go with me, will he go with you? Su Zishuan held her head high and chest out, showing no intention of backing down. I only know that Brother Ziming doesn't want to go with you. Brother Ziming? Jiang Yang gritted her teeth, took a deep breath, and forced herself to calm down. Ziming, can we have a good chat? Ms. Jiang, I don't know what we can talk about. Your lover is still waiting for you. I am doing well now. I have a job and someone to accompany me. Please don't bother me anymore. Jiang Yang choked. She had 1,000 words in her heart, but when she met my cold gaze, she swallowed them back. Xu Juwen is not my lover, Ziming, please give me 10 minutes. I want to explain it to you clearly, okay? I have something else to do. Maybe next time. I pulled Su Zishuan and was about to leave. Jiang Yang gritted her teeth. Okay, Lu Ziming, you're great. You'd better not regret it. Jiang Yang turned and left angrily. After she left, I apologized to Su Zishuan and said, I'm sorry to bother you. I'll treat you to a meal another day. It's okay, no trouble. Su Zishuan didn't care. I just can't stand that woman's arrogance. Let's go. I'm going to your house today, so I'll give you a ride. When she went downstairs, Jiang Yang was still waiting outside. Seeing the two of them talking and laughing, she became so angry that her eyes turned red. Lu Ziming, don't forget, I am your wife. Without waiting for me to speak, Su Zishuan said bluntly, aren't you going to get a divorce? You won't be divorced soon. Jiang Yang became even angrier. Su Zishuan's words seemed to imply that their relationship was unusual. As long as I don't sign, he can forget about getting a divorce. I sighed, Jiang Yang, why are you doing this? After saying that, I declined Su Zishuan's request to go with me and returned home alone. 13. I still underestimated Jiang Yang's persistence. She actually found out where I live. That night, there was a knock on the door. When I opened the door and saw Jiang Yang standing at the door, I felt helpless and annoyed. What on earth are you going to do? I think I have made myself clear enough. I don't want to continue this rotten marriage. There's no need to torture each other. Jiang Yang didn't care and pushed me away, rushed into the house and started walking around. After making sure there were no signs of other people living there, she felt relieved, folded her hands over her chest, and spoke with impatience in her tone. You've been making enough trouble these days. Come home with me now. I can forgive you for what you have done these days. This self-righteous tone surprised and made me laugh. For the first time, I felt that Jiang Yang was such a self-righteous woman. Jiang Yang, do you really think I don't know about that little thing between you and Xu Juwen? Do you think I asked for a divorce just to amuse you? You and I have been married for 5 years. I just don't want to make things too awkward, so I chose to leave alone. Can you save some face for yourself? Will you feel at ease only if the situation becomes irreversible? Jiang Yang explained with an unpleasant expression, how many times do I have to tell you? I just treat him as a younger brother. I sneered. Brother? Would my brother push my sister down on the bed and do something shameful like that? Jiang Yang's face turned pale in an instant. I. Seeing her trying to explain but not knowing where to start, I remained silent. Even without the photos sent by Xu Juwen, I could clearly feel Jiang Yang's love for him. Everything that happened between the two of them, including everything Jiang Yang did to me, seemed to tell me that the woman in front of me was no longer the little girl whose eyes were full of love for me. She is now beautiful and a successful career woman. It is inevitable that some young people will be tempted. But no matter when we were dating or when we just got married, I never thought that one day Jiang Yang would betray me and this marriage. Stop trying to make excuses. I spoke calmly. Perhaps you don't know, but I know you better than you think. Jiang Yang, stop bothering me. Jiang Yang wanted to explain, but was interrupted by a sudden phone call. Sister, my legs hurt so much, can you come back and stay with me? The aggrieved voice made Jiang Yang feel a little guilty. After all, she couldn't bear to leave Xu Zhiwen, who was young and strong. After hesitating for a moment, she slowed down her tone. I'm sorry, Zhiwen, I'm busy. I'll be back when I'm done. Be good and don't move around or you might get hurt. On the other end of the phone, Xu Zhiwen was delighted and quickly signaled the people around him to be quiet. He held the microphone with his hand and lowered his voice. Sister, do you not want me anymore? You lost your temper with me that day, and I was sad for a long time. Basically, all women will like a boy who is handsome, strong, and has a good and obedient personality. Jiang Yang might not have noticed that her voice had become exceptionally gentle at this moment. Okay, it's my fault. When I get back, I will make it up to you, okay? After hanging up the phone, the guilt in her eyes disappeared. It seemed that Xu Zhiwen's words washed away all the shame she felt for cheating on her husband. She put away her phone and looked at me in front of her. I was just too bored, just for fun, there's no need for you to make such a big deal about it, right? I promise you that you will always be my husband and will never be replaced by anyone. Should you be satisfied with this? 14. I suddenly felt sick. Get lost, Jiang Yang, stop disgusting me. I didn't try to hide the disgust in my tone. There was a flash of anger in Jiang Yang's eyes, but when she met the disgust in my eyes, she became a little nervous. Isn't it just a flirtation with another man? Do you have to take it so seriously? You are still with that little girl. Shut up! I shouted. Jiang Yang, if you dare to spew shit, I will go straight to court and sue you. Jiang Yang's chest heaved with anger. She didn't quite understand. In the past, I couldn't even speak loudly to her, let alone scold her. But now, I actually used such disgusting words to humiliate her. She finally realized that something had indeed changed. Jiang Yang suppressed the anger on her face. Okay, I won't say any more. Calm down. I'll come see you tomorrow. No. I sneered. It's hard for you to travel between two places for two men. You should just focus on your family's writing. Jiang Yang gritted her teeth, and finally, turned around and left angrily. At the weekend, I received an invitation from Su Zishuan. Tomorrow is the weekend, do you want to go shopping together? I subconsciously wanted to refuse. But Su Zishuan's next words made me hesitate. Do you still want to get back together with that ex? Do you want to? Of course not. I hesitated for a moment, but finally agreed. I will go. When I arrived at the agreed location, I met Su Zishuan. Unlike before, she was wearing denim shorts and a short-sleeved shirt, which was simple but exceptionally beautiful. When she saw me, she immediately jumped up and waved. Her energetic appearance attracted the attention of many people around. I have to admit that Su Zishuan is really beautiful. She seems to be able to pull off a lot of styles. Whether she is a mature career woman at work or a playful girl after get off work, she handles it all with ease. God really has mercy on her. All the drunk young people in the company have expressed their admiration for her. But she rejected them all, giving people the feeling that she was gentle but distant. Come on, I want Big Matt to come today. As soon as we met, Su Zishuan pulled my arm and urged me. I smiled bitterly. All men should understand how painful it is to accompany a woman shopping. Do we have a specific goal? Su Zishuan stuck out her tongue. Come on Tilda, you are so young, why do you have the mentality of an old man? I don't care. Today I'm just going to go shopping and do some shopping. I was still a little hesitant, but Su Zishuan directly took my hand. Let's go Tilda. Just as I was being led towards the mall gate, an angry scream suddenly came from behind me. Lu Ziming. 15. I paused. When I turned around, I saw Jiang Yang striding towards me angrily. Lu Ziming, don't forget, we haven't divorced yet. Jiang Yang stared at the hands held by Su Zishuan and me. Don't you have any sense of shame for flirting with other women like this? I immediately became angry. What qualifications do you have to question me? Su Zishuan chimed in, that's right, we are at least upright, unlike some people who are whores and want to pretend to be virtuous. Jiang Yang ignored me and stared at me. So, you insisted on getting a divorce just for this woman. My brows furrowed and my face darkened. Jiang Yang, do you think everyone is as dirty as you? Don't you know why I got divorced? Jiang Yang didn't care at all. Instead, she sneered and asked, "What's wrong? I've already apologized to you, but you still insisted on getting a divorce and even secretly transferred my job behind my back. Wasn't it all because of this woman? Lu Ziming, you are the betrayer of this relationship." I sighed inwardly. After 5 years, I asked myself if I was worthy of this relationship. There are also attempts to repair a broken marriage. But what I get now is groundless accusations and questioning. Jiang Yang, don't you think it's ridiculous? There was annoyance in my eyes. Who between us is sorry for this marriage? I don't care. As long as we're not divorced, you're not allowed to have affairs with other women. Jiang Yang came forward and tried to hold my hand. I took a step back and dodged, my tone cold. That's enough. I've said before, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. Before I could finish my words, a familiar voice sounded behind me. Yang Yang Tilder. I don't know. Xu Jiwen ran over from behind, put his arm around Jiang Yang's shoulders without any hesitation, and gave me a provocative smile. Hey, Mr. Lu, it's been a long time since we last met. I feel like you look a lot older. Looking at their intimate behavior, I just felt irony. Jiang Yang, don't you feel embarrassed by what you just said? Jiang Yang gently pushed Xu Jiwen away from her side, and said calmly, I just brought him here to help him get used to the working environment here. So what? My eyes were indifferent. Are you trying to prove something by saying this? No matter what Jiang Yang said, there was one fact that could not be changed in any way. She cheated. You don't have to explain to me. I interrupted her. 16. What happens between you and your lover is none of my business. It's your freedom. After saying that, I pulled Su Zishuan away. Lu Ziming. Jiang Yang caught up. Su Zishuan turned her head to take a look, then pulled me into the small commodity city nearby. After turning around several times inside, he ran out from the other end. I thought this would help me get rid of Jiang Yang, but the latter's persistence was beyond my imagination. I soon noticed Jiang Yang and the other person following behind me. I felt even more annoyed, so I just stood there and waited for them to catch up. Lu Ziming, how long are you going to make trouble? Jiang Yang walked over quickly. At most, I'll apologize to you, okay? It's rare for her to give in. But this way of surrendering is also full of perfunctory attitude. But even with this perfunctory approach, Jiang Yang was unwilling to even show it in the past 5 years of marriage. Jiang Yang, why are you doing this? You know best what you did. If I had done something like that with another woman, ask yourself, would you be able to accept it? Before Jiang Yang could speak, Xu Jiwen grabbed her hand. Brother Ziming, there's no need for you to make such a scene because of me. What my sister needs is a man who can take care of the house and a companion who can soothe her emotions. If you really love her, you shouldn't make things difficult for her. Take good care of her and leave the rest to me, okay? Life with 3 people might be very happy, what do you think? What is this theory? I shook my head, just finding it ridiculous. But before I could say anything, Jiang Yang shook off Xu Jiwen's hand. What the hell are you farting about? Jiang Yang's face was gloomy, and her tone was rarely filled with anger. Jiwen, you are an adult. You should know what you should and shouldn't say. Xu Jiwen's face froze. In the past when the two were together, Jiang Yang had always been extremely tolerant and indulgent towards him. Don't say scolding. Even the few times I said harsh words to him, I didn't do that much. Xu Jiwen looked aggrieved. This was his usual tactic. Every time he pretended to be aggrieved, acted obediently, and acted pitiful, Jiang Yang would immediately soften her heart. But this time, he miscalculated. Jiang Yang didn't even look at him, and there was even a hint of impatience in her eyes. Xu Jiwen took a step back and dared not say anything more. Ziming, come back with me. 17. Jiang Yang came to my side, and there was a rare hint of softness in her tone. Xu Jiwen's face suddenly turned ugly, and he looked at me with a hint of resentment. I didn't say anything about this. I have always known that Xu Jiwen is not a good person. He has provoked me more than once in the past. I always choose to endure, but even a clay man has some temper. I can go back with you, but what about him? Jiang Yang was stunned. I subconsciously turned my head and looked over. Xu Juwen immediately put away his resentful look and acted like a pitiful puppy. He is indeed very handsome and his acting skills are superb. A hint of pity suddenly flashed across Jiang Yang's eyes. I shook my head and sneered, my tone full of sarcasm. With such good acting skills, it would be a shame not to enter the entertainment industry. A hint of dissatisfaction flashed across Jiang Yang's face. After hesitating for a while, she turned her head and gave instructions to Xu Juwen. Juwen, apologize to Ziming. Xu Juwen showed a shocked expression. Why? There's no reason for that. Just apologize if you're asked to. Jiang Yang's tone was firm and unquestionable. Xu Juwen's eyes were red, and it seemed that he would cry out in grievance in the next second. Sister, don't you like me anymore? The coldness on Jiang Yang's face melted a little. Watching their performance, I just felt sick to my stomach and turned away. Seeing this, Jiang Yang hurriedly caught up. At this moment, Su Zishuan, who had been standing aside, suddenly stood in front of her. Get out of the way. Jiang Yang looked unhappy. Why? Su Zishuan was not polite at all. I turned around and saw this scene. Seeing the two people at loggerheads, I couldn't help but hold my forehead with my hand. Let's go, there's no need to waste time with them. Su Zishuan nodded obediently, followed me, and walked up the escalator in the mall with me. Jiang Yang continued to follow closely, and Xu Juwen gritted his teeth and trotted after her. I started to feel annoyed about this. A good weekend was ruined by these two people. Brother Ziming, ignore them. Su Zishuan gently tugged at my sleeve. I forced a smile. Good. Jiang Yang, who was following behind, saw this scene and gritted her teeth in anger. She quickly stepped forward and pushed Su Zishuan away. Lu Ziming. Have you had enough? I admit that I was wrong in the past. If you come home with me, I can break up with Xu Juwen completely. 18. I was a little surprised. Doesn't she like Xu Juwen very much? If I quit now, wouldn't that be exactly what she wants? Why are you saying this now? And judging from her expression, she didn't seem to be joking. But I don't care. What if Jiang Yang no longer contacts Xu Juwen in the future? Can a broken mirror be mended? Hearing Jiang Yang's words, Xu Juwen's face turned pale. Sister, are you serious? Jiang Yang didn't look back, just stared at me. Seeing this, the grief and anger in Xu Juwen's eyes turned into resentment. He rushed forward, hugged Jiang Yang in his arms, and accused her at the top of his voice. Why? I've been with you for 2 years, and now you just say you don't want me anymore. What do you think of me? Am I a piece of trash that you can throw away after you use me? 2 years. There was a flash of surprise and self-mockery in my eyes. Forgive the fact that these two people had contact 2 years ago. It is even possible that the two of them had been together 2 years ago. The thought of having shared a bed with someone like this for so long suddenly made me feel sick. Shut up. Jiang Yang was so angry that she struggled to break free and slapped Xu Juwen hard in the face. Xu Juwen was stunned by the slap. He stood there with disbelief in his eyes. Are you really so heartless? I have worked hard to stay by your side for 2 years. Even if I have no credit, I have worked hard, right? His emotions gradually became agitated, and his eyes became bloodshot. Jiang Yang, you'd better give me an explanation. Jiang Yang's face was cold and her tone was threatening. Xu Juwen, I warn you again, recognize your identity. If you dare to mention these things again, don't blame me for getting angry. I was not surprised at all as I was watching the show from the sidelines. Indeed, Xu Juwen is young, energetic, and knows how to please women. But he didn't know Jiang Yang well enough. Jiang Yang might have liked him. But I just like that he is obedient. Even the occasional temper is seen by Jiang Yang as a way to increase the fun between the two of them. But once he made Jiang Yang unhappy, the latter would not tolerate it. I can understand why Xu Juwen got angry. After all, the reason why he was pestering Jiang Yang was definitely not just because he was greedy for her body. On a deeper level, Jiang Yang gave him a good life. To him, Jiang Yang is his rich elder sister. Losing Jiang Yang would mean losing everything he has now. Therefore, he would do everything he could to catch Jiang Yang. But when he met Jiang Yang's cold gaze, he felt a little afraid. After hesitating for a long time, Xu Juwen looked at me. Lu Ziming, since you don't love Yang Yang, why can't you give her to me? Is it fun to have the best of both worlds? Since you already have a new lover, why are you still competing with me? 19. In just a few words, the conflict was diverted. It seems like he is complaining, but in fact he is secretly throwing dirty water at me. Sure enough, Jiang Yang's face turned ugly in an instant. I sneered. Are you farting? Now your Yang Yang refuses to divorce. It's not that I want to snatch it from you. What makes you think I would rob a cheating woman? Jiang Yang looked unhappy, but Su Zishuan was smiling with the corners of her mouth curled up. That's right. Su Zishuan came to my side skipping and jumping. Let's go, brother Ziming. She deliberately emphasized the word brother. Jiang Yang looked unhappy and wanted to chase after him, but was entangled by Xu Juan. You can't leave. Jiang Yang stared at him coldly. Xu Juan, are you trying to make me lose my temper? Xu Juan gritted his teeth and still did not retreat. The two of them struggled for a long time, but in the end, Xu Juan left. He didn't dare to break up with Jiang Yang completely. After all, he was just Jiang Yang's male lover. After seeing Xu Juan off, Jiang Yang seemed to have some free time. So much so that she would come to my company every morning to deliver breakfast. Send a love lunchbox in the name of my wife. She would also wait for me downstairs of the company with a bouquet of flowers when I got off work, and hand them to me personally when she saw me. The woman is chasing the man, and she is a very beautiful woman. Such plots seem to only appear in TV dramas. This also caused colleagues to make a fuss and discuss various issues in private. Some people say that I already have a wife, but I am still having an unclear relationship with Su Zishuan, and I am a complete scumbag. Some people also speculated that I was liked by two women at the same time, so this scene of two women chasing one man happened. But no matter what kind of argument it is, it makes me feel bored. When Jiang Yang appeared downstairs again, I took the initiative to walk up to her. Jiang Yang's face showed joy, with a hint of pride. Why? Changed your mind? Jiang Yang, find some time to get a divorce. My expression was cold. I no longer have any attachment to this marriage. After 5 years, I'm tired. Whether it was Jiang Yang's cheating or the endless entanglement now, it made me feel exhausted. The ancient said, once unfaithful, never to be trusted again. Jiang Yang was stunned, and her eyes slowly turned red. Are you really so heartless? We have been together for so many years, can you just let go? I shook my head. Jiang Yang, in the past 5 years, even if you paid attention to me for a moment, you would never say such a thing. I have given Jiang Yang countless opportunities to turn back. But she didn't cherish it. So, don't bother me anymore, it will only make me hate you more. You are no longer alone like before. You should know the impact if this matter gets out of hand. 20. I made no effort to conceal the threat in my words. Jiang Yang looked pale. She just didn't want to believe that the man who once regarded her as his beloved would now threaten her with divorce. Ziming, when did you become so cruel? Jiang Yang looked heartbroken. I didn't speak. Who can keep the original intention unchanged for 5 years? I tried hard and did it. But reality proves that keeping the original intention is just self-deception. My original intention has not changed anything. Jiang Yang still changed her mind. What qualifications do you have to question me? I asked back calmly. Jiang Yang was silent, tears welling up in her eyes. After a long time, she raised her head and her voice was hoarse. Can you give me a moment? Ziming, I just can't accept it for now. I think even if we have to end it, we have to end it seriously. I don't want it to be so hasty, okay? I know that even if I refuse, I will only face endless entanglement from the other party. So I just agreed. In the next few days, Jiang Yang started to behave like before. Breakfast. Flowers. Various gifts. Every day when I go to work, my desk is piled with all kinds of flowers and gifts. It's impossible not to be conspicuous. This of course caused colleagues in the company to talk about it. Some people even thought that these were sent by Su Zishuan. I can only hasten to clarify this. No, I guess it was sent to the wrong person. Can you still deliver the wrong thing every day? Of course my colleagues didn't believe it. I didn't explain anything and just threw the flowers and gifts into the trash can in front of everyone. Throw it away just like that. What a pity. I don't know when Su Zishuan appeared in front of me, with a sarcastic tone in her voice. I shrugged, it's not mine, so I have to throw it away. Su Zishuan wrinkled her nose, I really don't know how to cherish it. After saying that, she turned and left angrily. This scene naturally confirmed the relationship between the two in the eyes of their colleagues. Faced with everyone's ambiguous gazes, I could only smile bitterly. I was also very confused. He also found out Su Zishuan's background. She is the daughter of a big boss. But she has never been very serious about her work, let alone love. The big boss was once so anxious that he lost his hair. But Su Zishuan's personality is too eccentric, and he, as a father, cannot discipline her at all. He even once suspected that there was something wrong with his daughter's sexual orientation. Until my arrival. I can only shake my head at this. I don't think a girl like Su Zishuan, who has a perfect appearance and figure and comes from a well-off family, would like me. Everyone should stop making jokes about girls. It can easily affect other people's lives. So you're afraid that I'll affect your life? 21. I don't know when Su Zishuan came back, and when she heard what I said, she spoke softly behind me. I turned my head and said helplessly, you know that's not what I meant. What do you mean? Su Zishuan was a bit aggressive. I stuttered for a moment. After all, anyone would feel embarrassed if they were caught talking about someone behind their back. It's just a casual chat, don't get me wrong. Su Zishuan looked at me strangely, but fortunately she didn't ask any further questions. Just when I was looking for an excuse to leave, Su Zishuan suddenly spoke softly. The flowers today were given by me. I was stunned. You gave it to me. I scratched my head in embarrassment. I don't know, sorry. It doesn't matter. Su Zishuan's eyebrows were curved. Remember not to lose it again next time. And I'll ask the security to keep an eye on that woman. If you need anything, you can also tell me. I have plenty of ways to make her stop harassing you. I didn't doubt what Su Zishuan said. After all, the big boss is also a well-known figure in the circle. As his daughter, it is naturally not an easy role to be with. But I just declined politely. The relationship between the two in the company was originally somewhat ambiguous. If we go any further, I'm afraid there won't be a simple ending. I don't want others to think that I have any ambiguous relationship with my boss's daughter. I have reached my current position through my own hard work step by step. Not through the back door. After get off work, Jiang Yang appeared again. They're haunting. I was quite impatient, what do you want? Are you free? I didn't try to hide the disgust in my eyes. Jiang Yang's eyes were red, and she spoke hoarsely, I just want to make up for it. No need. 22. I frowned. But Jiang Yang kept shaking her head. No, it's not necessary. I don't want our relationship to end like this. Give me a month. After a month, if you still want a divorce, I'll agree. As long as I can get a divorce, anything is fine. This is the only thought in my mind at the moment. Whatever you want. After saying this, I turned and left. But Jiang Yang grabbed his wrist. Let's have a meal together. I frowned. Ever since I made up my mind to divorce, I have felt more and more disgusted with Jiang Yang. Just being alone makes me feel uncomfortable. No need. I pulled my hand away, my words filled with impatience. Jiang Yang looked aggrieved. I just want to sit down with you and have a good chat. Just promise me, okay? In the past, I couldn't bear to see her looking aggrieved. But now, all Jiang Yang sees in my eyes is indifference. Please. There was a pleading look in Jiang Yang's eyes. As long as you agree, I will sign the divorce agreement as agreed. I sighed. Let's go. I told myself in my heart that all this was for the purpose of getting a divorce as soon as possible. Under Jiang Yang's expectant eyes, I got into her car. Jiang Yang didn't drive to the restaurant, but went to the supermarket. Let's go shopping together. Jiang Yang pushed the shopping cart over. I put my hands in my pockets and said nothing. Jiang Yang didn't care, but walked ahead by herself, looking at the dazzling array of goods around her, and spoke softly. I still remember that when we first got married, my stomach was not good, and you always took time to go to the supermarket to buy vegetables and cook for me. At this point, her voice became choked. It turns out that so many years have passed without me noticing. It turned out that she really lost the man who loved her so much with her own hands. I didn't say anything, and there was no emotion in my heart. If he had to say it, he just felt it wasn't worth it. He spent 5 whole years for such a woman. How many 5-year periods are there in a lifetime? 23. Jiang Yang bought a lot of vegetables. I noticed that many of the dishes in the shopping cart were my favorites. So, Jiang Yang doesn't he not understand me? I just don't care. When paying the bill, Jiang Yang couldn't help but mutter, I didn't expect the price of beef to have risen so much. Do you usually buy beef yourself? I originally wanted to find some daily topics to liven up the atmosphere, but I spoke indifferently. I left with nothing, so I didn't have a lot of money to waste. The expression on Jiang Yang's face became stiff and she fell silent. She didn't speak softly until they got into the car. Actually, you don't have to do this. After all, my income is much higher than yours. I can. Need not. I interrupted her. I just want a divorce as soon as possible and don't want to waste too much time on divorce lawsuits. Jiang Yang was silent again. It seems that he intends to avoid this issue by evading the issue. After arriving home, Jiang Yang carried a bunch of ingredients into the kitchen. Looking at Jiang Yang busy in the kitchen, I was a little dazed. I myself haven't cooked for a long time. After all, I live alone and have no passion for cooking, so I basically just eat whatever I want. The aroma of food coming from the kitchen gives the house a bit of life. When I first got married, I used to cook a lot. Although life was difficult during that time, we were really happy. But later, the opportunities for the two to eat together became fewer and fewer. The appearance of Xu Zhiwen brought their relationship to a freezing point. In about 2 hours, Jiang Yang cooked 3 dishes and a soup. Looking at the not-so-exquisite dishes on the table, I didn't have much appetite. There's no need to make so much. There are only 2 of us and we can't finish it all. It doesn't matter, eat as much as you can. Jiang Yang didn't care. She was busy serving rice and adding soup. She is as virtuous as a wife who manages the household well. But I know in my heart that all this is an illusion. For someone who can even pretend to love, what's wrong with pretending to be virtuous? At the dinner table, I didn't say a word from beginning to end, and never touched the food in my bowl. I just kept picking at the food with my chopsticks. Jiang Yang opened her mouth when she saw this, but in the end she said nothing. The atmosphere was eerily quiet. After finishing her meal hastily, Jiang Yang took the initiative to pick up the dishes and walked into the kitchen. The female president, who used to be noble and cool, would actually wash dishes in the kitchen wearing an apron. If outsiders saw this, they would definitely be shocked. Or maybe not. I know that Jiang Yang's appearance is nothing special in Xu Zhiwen's eyes. She could treat Xu Zhiwen so gently, and cooking for her should just be a daily routine. After all, when Jiang Yang was at home, she never did any housework. But her cooking skills and movements are so skillful. I sat on the couch, neither paying attention nor stopping it. You can't wake up someone who is pretending to be asleep. After cleaning up the kitchen, Jiang Yang sat next to me naturally. Zimming. Before I finished speaking, I frowned, stood up, and walked straight into the study. Jiang Yang looked sad. Now, he doesn't even want to get close to me. As it was getting dark, I heard some noise coming from the bathroom and couldn't help but frown. Doesn't this woman intend to leave? I took a deep breath and said coldly, standing at the bathroom door. Please leave after you take a shower. 24. The sound of water in the bathroom paused for a moment, followed by a series of tinkling sounds. It seemed like something had fallen to the ground. I ignored him, turned into the bedroom and locked the door. But not long after, there was a knock on the door. Jiang Yang's slightly sad voice sounded outside the door, Zimming, I have something to tell you. Can you please open the door? I'm very sleepy and don't want to talk nonsense with you. I'm not shy about that. Jiang Yang was silent for a while, and the footsteps faded away. I sighed. I should not have agreed to her. The next morning, Jiang Yang prepared breakfast early again. I noticed that there were more of her toiletries in the bathroom. It looks like he plans to live here permanently. I feel helpless. With a dark face, he threw the toiletries into the trash can in front of Jiang Yang. Jiang Yang did not stop him, but took out some spare toiletries from her bag. This kind of life lasted for a while and I was exhausted both physically and mentally. Just at this time, Su Zishuan suddenly found me. I'm going on a business trip in a few days, so please prepare yourself. On business trip? I am a little confused as I don't seem to have received such a notification. But I didn't think much about it, instead I was very happy. If I go on a business trip, I can temporarily avoid Jiang Yang's entanglement. Thinking of this, I smiled and nodded, okay. You seem very happy. Su Zishuan said with a smile. I guess so. I didn't explain. When I got home, Jiang Yang was not at home, so I immediately started packing my luggage. Just when I was about to go out, Jiang Yang came back. She was holding a shopping bag from the supermarket, and when she saw the suitcase in my hand, her expression was stunned for a moment. Are you going to run away again? What do you mean by escape? I couldn't help but smile sarcastically. This is my home. I can come and go as I please. Do I need to talk nonsense with you? Jiang Yang hurriedly explained, no, it's not like that. I pushed her away and said, I'm going on a business trip tomorrow, so pack up and leave. Don't stay at my house. Jiang Yang grabbed my arm. Are you really on a business trip? Why didn't you tell me in advance? Why tell you? I shook off her hand and sneered, would you have told me when you were on a business trip before? 25. Ever since Xu Zhiwen appeared, Jiang Yang never told me when she was on a business trip. After all, the so-called business trip was just a private meeting with Xu Zhiwen. Facing my questioning, a hint of unnaturalness flashed across Jiang Yang's face, and she lost some of her confidence when she spoke. So, when will you be back? None of your business. I left after saying this. Her eyes immediately turned red and she reached out to grab my suitcase. I don't agree, you can't leave. I shook my head and sighed. Is it interesting? You know, I will never regret what I have decided. You can stop me for a while, but can you stop me forever? Of course I can. She looked stubborn, hugged me tightly, and raised her head to kiss me. I pushed her away in disgust. She was stunned, and tears fell one by one like drops of water from a broken string. Why? Why do you do this to me? She collapsed and screamed, beating my chest hard with both hands. I looked at her, no expression on my face. You know why, don't you? Why pretend to be innocent? Jiang Yang was stunned. Yes, she knew why. She always knew. But she never thought about changing, but kept forcing me to give in. I gently pushed her away and left with my suitcase. Jiang Yang didn't stop me again, but the moment I walked out, she fell to the ground, covering her face, her shoulders trembling slightly. I found a hotel to stay in. Late at night, Su Zishuan sent a message. Will I pick you up at your house tomorrow? I texted her the hotel's location and turned off my phone. I slept exceptionally soundly that night. The next morning, I was woken up by a call from Su Zishuan. I'm downstairs at the hotel, please come down. Okay, I'll clean it up. After a quick wash, I went downstairs carrying my suitcase. The first thing I saw was Su Zishuan and Jiang Yang arguing at the hotel entrance. Why are you here? I stepped forward and looked at Jiang Yang coldly. The latter's eyes were red and he looked at Su Zishuan with hostility. Hearing this, he was a little dissatisfied. The business trip you mentioned is with her. If not with her, then with you. I said angrily, we are here to work seriously. Do you think everyone is as dirty as you? Jiang Yang's face turned pale. Su Zishuan rolled her eyes at her and handed me the key naturally. You drive, I don't want to move. Good. Looking at the two people chatting and laughing, Jiang Yang felt even more uncomfortable. But until the car started and sped away, I didn't even give her a glance. Why did you quarrel with her again? In the car, I asked curiously. Su Zishuan leaned lazily in the passenger seat and rolled her eyes when she heard the words. I was going to ask you something. I just arrived this morning and saw this woman sitting in the hotel lobby. She sat up, her eyes suspicious. Were you with her last night? What nonsense. I glared at her and then explained what had happened during this period. Su Zishuan was amazed after hearing this. What a passionate woman. Are you infatuated? I shook my head. I just feel annoyed. 26. Su Zishuan couldn't help but curl the corners of her mouth and hummed along with the radio, seeming to be in a good mood. When I arrived at the airport, I noticed several colleagues from the company and couldn't help but feel curious. Are you going to sign a big contract? This kind of situation doesn't seem as simple as a business trip to discuss cooperation. Su Zishuan shook her head and said mysteriously, "You will know when you get there." This look made me shake my head and laugh, and I stopped asking questions. Originally, I wanted to use this business trip to get rid of Jiang Yang's entanglement. Besides, with the boss's daughter as his backup, what he does is not something he, as an employee, should worry about. After getting on the plane, Su Zishuan fell into a deep sleep. Didn't seem to get enough rest. I quietly called the stewardess and asked for a blanket to cover her. The girl seemed to be worried and her brows were furrowed. But fortunately I slept very soundly. I was just about to take a break when my shoulders sank slightly. When I turned around, Su Zishuan's head was pressing on my shoulder. After thinking about it, I didn't push her away. This posture was maintained until the plane landed and the announcement sounded. Su Zishuan slowly woke up. Su Zishuan also noticed that the two of them were in a somewhat ambiguous posture at the moment, and she stuck out her tongue embarrassedly. I slept too late last night. Because of work? No, because of playing games. Su Zishuan's matter-of-fact look stunned me for a moment, and I smiled bitterly and shook my head. You, really? After getting off the plane, several colleagues left immediately. I wanted to follow, but Su Zishuan grabbed my arm. We're not together. Someone will come to pick us up in a while. I was a little confused, but didn't ask any more questions. But the ambiguous looks from my colleagues before they leave always make me feel a little weird. After a while, a business car stopped in front of the two of them. After getting on the car, we drove all the way to the suburbs. What kind of projects should be discussed in the suburbs? I deliberately teased, "Are you going to sell me out?" Su Zishuan rolled her eyes. "How much are you worth?" 2. I won't say anything more. The car stopped in front of a villa. It's called a villa, but it's more like a resort. As soon as I got off the car, I was stunned by the scene before me. "Miss, let's do it." Several people dressed as butlers came over and took the suitcases from the two men. Su Zishuan handed over the suitcase naturally. I find it even weirder. Is this the Su family's property? I was assigned to sit next to Su Zishuan. While putting down her luggage, Su Zishuan stretched. "I'll take a nap first. Remember to call me in the afternoon." 27. I nodded, walked around the villa for a while, and returned to the room to take a nap. I don't know if it's because I've been sleeping too poorly recently or because I'm too stressed. When I woke up, it was already dark outside. I was startled, sat up, picked up my phone and took a look. No call, just one unread message. It was sent by Su Zishuan. "You pig, I asked you to call me, but you were sleeping soundly. The time was 2 hours ago." I quickly called. When the call was connected, I immediately apologized. "Sorry, I overslept." "You still know." There was a hint of coquettishness in Su Zishuan's tone. "You pig, I called you so many times." I smiled bitterly and changed the subject. It didn't delay the progress of the work, did it? "Hey, what's the use of work? Come downstairs and eat." The more this happens, the weirder it feels to me. I felt like I wasn't here to work, but rather to accompany Su Zishuan on vacation. When I went downstairs, I noticed that the colleagues who had left earlier also appeared at the dining table. It seemed like everyone was waiting for me. I apologized to everyone somewhat awkwardly. "Sorry everyone, I kept you waiting." A male colleague quickly waved his hand. No, we are the ones who disturbed Mr. Lu's rest." Su Zishuan slapped the table impatiently. "It's time to eat." Then he picked up a piece of pork ribs and put it in my bowl. "Try it now, this is something I just learned." I had just sat down, and was so shocked by her sudden behavior that I almost got up and left. The colleagues around him lowered their heads and ate their meals in tacit understanding. But this makes me even more embarrassed. But when he saw Su Zishuan's eyes sparkling with stars, he was too embarrassed to refuse, so he could only bite the bullet and pick up the ribs and put them into his mouth. "How's it going? Is it delicious? Is it delicious?" Su Zishuan asked impatiently, looking like she was waiting for praise. This feeling of relaxation as if no one was around made me feel very uncomfortable. I could only say awkwardly, "It's okay, just a little salty." But in fact, when I took that bite, I felt like I was not eating ribs, but a big mouthful of salt. I have some doubts. Do wealthy families buy salt for free? If it tastes good, eat more. Su Zishuan put a few more pieces of ribs into my bowl. I remained silent. During this meal, I felt like I was dying. 28. Fortunately, after Su Zishuan ate a piece of ribs herself, she did not put any more into my bowl, but silently pulled the ribs in front of herself. But this meal caused their colleagues to completely misunderstand the relationship between the two. After the meal, one of my colleagues came up to me and asked with a smile, "Mr. Liu, are you satisfied with the meal?" I was drinking water in big gulps. When I heard that, my face turned green. I held it in for a long time before I finally showed a smile that was uglier than crying. Very, very good. My colleagues were shocked by my appearance. What's wrong, Mr. Liu? Are you feeling unwell? No, I'm just a little thirsty. I just wanted to get rid of this person as soon as possible. I still have that salty feeling in my mouth. Just then, Su Zishuan came over with a bottle of water. Here, drink more. I nodded awkwardly, thank you. Really? If it doesn't taste good, just say something. I thought you liked it. Su Zishuan simply ignored her colleagues who were making faces at her and reached out to hold my arm. Come on, accompany me for a walk. I haven't seen the night view here yet. I was about to refuse when the phone in my pocket suddenly rang. After looking at the incoming call notification, I frowned and hung up the phone. But the man was very persistent and called again the next second. I hung up again, but the other party still called. It seems like he won't stop until I answer the phone. Just when I was about to turn off the phone, Su Zishuan suddenly came over. Who is it? Before I could say anything, Su Zishuan had already taken the phone naturally. Hello? Who are you? On the other end of the phone, Jiang Yang's expression instantly twisted when she heard Su Zishuan's voice, and she almost screamed. You bitch, why are you holding Ziming's phone? Su Zishuan held the phone away with a look of disgust, and waited until she finished scolding before speaking impatiently. You are really annoying, we are doing business, we don't have time to deal with you. Get down to business. What business? What kind of serious business can a man and a woman have at this late hour of night? Countless unbearable scenes flashed through Jiang Yang's mind. Either way, it made her feel uncomfortable. There is definitely something wrong between Lu Ziming and this woman. Bitch! If you dare to hit on my husband, I will never let you go. 29. Su Zishuan was not afraid at all. Sorry, ex-wife, you will no longer be his husband. You have no right to ask whether I have any intentions towards him or not. What qualifications do you have to tell me what to do when you cheat on your spouse? Hang up quickly, I'm annoyed by your words. After saying that, Su Zishuan hung up the phone and quickly turned it off, not giving Jiang Yang any chance to go crazy. Here, your cell phone. Seeing her relieved expression, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Are you so happy? Of course I am happy. Su Zishuan snorted. You are just too soft-hearted. There is no need to accommodate such a woman. I didn't respond. After a long silence, he uttered a few words softly. Thanks. I am really grateful to Su Zishuan. The two parties just met by chance, but the other party was willing to help me block those bad things again and again. No matter what her purpose is, I have to say thank you. Su Zishuan shook her head silently, as if something was on her mind. The two of them just strolled quietly in the garden outside the villa. I don't know how long it was before I heard Su Zishuan whisper, if I had known this would happen, I should have taken the initiative to pursue you. What did you say? I didn't quite hear it. Nothing. Su Zishuan waved her hand and changed the subject. By the way, have you been dating that woman since college? Yeah. I nodded. Actually, I don't really want to talk about my past with Jiang Yang. But Su Zishuan seemed very interested and kept asking questions beside me. Suddenly Su Zishuan stood in front of me, with a faint light flashing in her eyes. You know, I actually go to the same university as you. I was a little surprised. Real? Su Zishuan didn't say anything, but just talked about the interesting things that happened to her in college. I listened with great interest at first. But the more I listened, the more I felt something was wrong. You are in the same department as Jiang Yang. 30. Su Zishuan was silent. After a long time, he finally spoke. You know what, Ziming, I actually regret it. I obviously like you very much, but because you are deeply in love with Jiang Yang, I chose to study abroad in a fit of anger. When I came back, I heard that you were married. I thought we would never see each other again, until my dad mentioned you one day. It turns out that you have been so constrained and unhappy these years that you can't even think about your future. Su Zishuan said seriously, I asked my father to transfer you here. You don't even know this. When I learned that you wanted to divorce, I was really happy and distressed. There was grievance and bitterness on her face. I was stunned. It even felt like my brain was shutting down. Su Zishuan's sudden confession made me feel a little absurd. Zishuan, you are not having a fever, are you? I even raised my hand and touched Su Zishuan's forehead. What are you doing, Tilda? Su Zishuan pouted and shook off my hand. I'm not sick, nor am I drunk. I like you, I always have. She had missed one many years ago. This time, she doesn't want to miss it again. Especially Jiang Yang's repeated entanglement made Su Zishuan feel a deep sense of crisis. She knew very well that I was so deeply in love with Jiang Yang at that time. She wasn't sure whether they would get back together. That's why she took the initiative to go on a business trip and take me away from Jiang Yang. Although men are rational, they become particularly emotional when facing the people they love. There is a high possibility that I will soften my heart because of Jiang Yang's constant nagging. She selfishly hopes that I can divorce Jiang Yang. Facing my puzzled look, Su Zishuan took a deep breath. Brother Ziming, I really like you, please give me a chance, okay? 31. Such a humble tone makes my heart sour. I am very conflicted. I don't know what to say. Su Zishuan suddenly patted my shoulder casually. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's go shopping. I breathed a sigh of relief and hurried to follow. In the next few days, Su Zishuan took me to various places in the villa area. Never mention work. Although this kind of life is comfortable, it makes me feel vaguely uneasy. But when I raised my doubts to Su Zishuan, she looked indifferent. We are experiencing life, and this is also part of our job. Is this also considered work? Seeing my puzzled look, Su Zishuan explained, this villa is our next new project. We are not here for fun, but to experience it as guests. Seeing that she said it seriously, I nodded, half believing it. In that case, all right. A cunning gleam flashed across Su Zishuan's eyes. Then I'll ask you to not be distracted for the next few days. Our evaluation is crucial to whether this project can be carried out. I suddenly felt that I had a great responsibility. Don't worry, I will evaluate it seriously. Days without work always go by faster. Before they knew it, the two had been in the villa area for more than half a month. I even have a feeling that my business ability has declined a lot during this period, and my hands and feet have become a little stiff. It seems like I've been lazy for too long. By the way, should we go back? 32. I never forgot who I was. A working man. Su Zishuan was chewing on a steak and asked in confusion, what's wrong? Do you think this place is not good? Of course not. I shook my head, it just feels like I've been here for too long, and I feel like I'm going to get bored. I'm still used to busy days. Su Zishuan gave me a strange look, picked up a piece of steak, put it in her mouth, chewed it and said incoherently, there will be many days like this in the future. I didn't hear it clearly and asked in confusion. It's okay. Su Zishuan shook her head and put a piece of steak on my plate. Ever since she confessed her feelings to me, she has become more bold in her actions. If outsiders didn't know, they would probably think they were a couple. I also tried to get Su Zishuan to restrain herself, but she didn't care at all. I consider myself a normal man. Faced with the advances of a fair-skinned, beautiful and lively woman like Su Zishuan, I cannot completely ignore the advances. I finally made it to the return trip, and as soon as I got off the plane, I received a call from my boss. Xiao Jiang, you've worked hard recently. Take a good rest for a few days. We can talk about the project after you're done. To be honest, I felt a little guilty talking to the big boss. After all, he and her daughter had almost become a couple during this period of time. When I got home and looked at the closed door, I breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that Jiang Yang has gone back. But as soon as he opened the door, he saw Jiang Yang sitting on the sofa in an apron, watching TV with relish. After seeing me, Jiang Yang immediately stood up excitedly. You're back. My good mood immediately dissipated. Why are you still here? Jiang Yang looked aggrieved. I was waiting for you to come back, but you didn't answer my call, so I thought you weren't coming back. Is it none of your business whether I come back or not? I don't feel sad. In the past, I was the one waiting for Jiang Yang to come back home, but now I just let her experience my own experience once in a while. It's been a month. When are you going to get a divorce? 33. Jiang Yang's face was gloomy. Do you really want a divorce? Zimming, we've been together for so many years, are you really so heartless? I just hope you give me a chance to love you again. I promise that I won't have anything to do with anyone else in the future, okay? Although I had expected that Jiang Yang would not give up easily, I still felt annoyed when I heard her say this again. Now Jiang Yang's repeated attempts to win back the man just make me feel sick. Don't waste your time. I told you there's no chance between us. No matter what you say, I won't change my mind. Just give up. Jiang Yang looked unwilling, but why? No reason. I spoke calmly. After being together for so many years, you shouldn't be so unfamiliar with me. I thought I had endured it for many years. In the past, I really thought about spending my whole life with Jiang Yang. That's why I choose to forgive again and again. That's why we choose to endure when we are hurt again and again. But 5 years later, I understand. Jiang Yang is not someone I can spend the rest of my life with. Perhaps Jiang Yang once really longed for a home. But having got it, she will desire something else. There was despair in Jiang Yang's eyes. She always thought she knew me well enough. That's why I feel that as long as I bow my head, the latter will definitely choose to forgive me. That's why she has been so unscrupulous all these years, without any regard for my feelings. But my words made her understand that I really didn't love her anymore. I was determined to get a divorce, just as I had married her regardless of the consequences. I will not regret it, nor will I change my mind. I'm sorry, Zimming. I turned and was about to leave, but Jiang Yang suddenly pounced on me and hugged my waist tightly from behind. I'm the one who should apologize. I'm sorry, husband. I should have taken better care of your feelings. I promise that I will never be with Xu Juan again. No. I'll make him quit tomorrow. Don't leave, okay? I didn't say anything, but slowly and firmly took her hand away. This is not the first time I have heard this. When she first recruited Xu Juan as her assistant, I was a little concerned. After all, he was a person of the opposite sex and the two of us would inevitably have too much contact during our work. At that time, Jiang Yang hugged me with a smile. Is my husband jealous? Since you don't like me, I will change my assistant to a female one tomorrow. You are my husband, no one can take me away from you. I find this very useful. The reason why our relationship has lasted for so many years is that we speak our mind directly without beating around the bush. But she didn't do what she said. Instead, she brought Xu Juan to attend our wedding anniversary. She said she felt Xu Juan was capable, a good person, and had no bad intentions. Hey, why are you angry with a kid? Be more generous. At that moment, I was already filled with disappointment. If you don't do what you promised, you will be disappointed. I didn't say much. Perhaps it was my silence that made her even more unscrupulous. The relationship between the two became increasingly intimate, and they even began to have frequent physical contact. My heart sank day by day. I tried telling her that. After all, the employees in the company have all seen this behavior and said all kinds of things behind his back. But Jiang Yang is always impatient with what I say. You also know that I don't like working. I finally hired an assistant who can play with me, but you still want to meddle in this and that. Don't forget, this company is mine, I can do whatever I want. For the sake of this family and my relationship with her, I chose to give in. But the next time, there was a problem with Xu Juan's work, and as soon as he called me to the office, Jiang Yang rushed over after hearing the news. Why do you always pick on him? He's a newcomer, he just joined the company, it's inevitable that he will have problems, why do you keep picking on him? I couldn't help but retort. His job is to be their boss assistant. If there is any mistake, it will affect the entire company. Jiang Yang looked disdainful. So what do you say? Fire him. Before I could say anything, Xu Juan immediately bowed to me with a look of grievance on his face. I'm sorry, Mr. Liu. I know you don't like me. I'll submit my resignation report as soon as I get back. Please don't quarrel with Mr. Jiang. This attitude immediately made Jiang Yang feel distressed, and she pointed at my nose and cursed. Do you have to force someone to death before you are happy? It's not easy for Juwen to come to this city and work hard by himself. How come you don't have any sympathy at all? After saying that, she took Xu Juwen away, and the matter was left unresolved. It is precisely because of this precedent that I no longer have any trust in her. No need to apologize, from now on we can go our separate ways and live our own lives. Hearing this, Jiang Yang was dumbfounded. Her face gradually turned snow white without a trace of blood, and her voice trembled. You mean to divorce me? Looking at her red eyes, I felt no emotion at all. Yes. I will have someone prepare the divorce agreement later, and you only need to sign it then. After saying that, I turned and left. Husband. Behind him, Jiang Yang broke down and cried. I didn't look back and I didn't hesitate. My fate with her is over. 34. That night, I received the document sent by Jiang Yang. It contained chat records and voice messages that had been deleted beyond recognition. Looking at those incoherent dialogues, I have no idea what she wants to express. Is she trying to tell me with these chat screenshots full of loopholes that she is not cheating? I couldn't help but sneer. This kind of cover-up can't even fool a child. After that, she sent a lot of photos. This is our previous photo. There are ones for every time period. Photos from when I was traveling, when I got married, and even when I was in college. Looking at the past scenes, I looked a little dazed. It turns out that she and I once loved each other so much. She would curl up in my arms and act like a little girl. He would also be a little naughty with me. On my birthday, he would cook for me personally and make a table full of colorful dark dishes. But no matter what, it is a beautiful memory. But unfortunately, things have changed. There's no going back. I was silent for a while and deleted the photos one by one. Since you have made up your mind to leave, there is no need to reminisce about the past. There is no point, it's just a waste of time. When the lawyer sent me the divorce agreement, I called her. The divorce agreement is ready. I'll go to your company to find you. She didn't say anything, was silent for a long time, and then hung up the phone. I looked at the divorce agreement and the lawyer listed me as the party who would be left with nothing, as I requested. I don't want anything. Let's just consider it as an end to our love. I picked up the pen and wrote my name stroke by stroke. During the process, scenes from the past kept flashing through my mind. First meeting. First hug. First kiss. She called me a fool for giving up my qualification for postgraduate study for her. At Jiang's mother's bedside, I solemnly promised her that I would love her forever. After the last stroke was written, a teardrop fell on it, smudged the ink. For the memories of the past, I will keep the good parts and discard the sad parts. But I want to look back, and it's impossible for me to look back. It's time to end this. I wiped the slightly moist corners of my eyes, picked up the divorce agreement, and went straight to Jiang Yang's company. When I arrived at the company, Jiang Yang seemed so rich that I had a smooth journey. When I arrived at the office, I took a deep breath and opened the door. Jiang Yang sat at her desk. In just 3 days, she became extremely haggard. It's like he's become a completely different person. When he saw me, a smile appeared on his pale face, which was uglier than crying. You're here. I nodded, walked forward and put the divorce agreement on the table. Take a look. If there's no problem, sign it. Jiang Yang didn't look at me, her eyes were slightly red, and she looked at me steadily. Do we really have to go this far? You should know that I love you. I lowered my head and said nothing. It's an established fact, there's no need to argue about it. Maybe she really loved me. But that love had deteriorated a long time ago. Sign it. 35. There is no need to waste any more time. Jiang Yang couldn't stop crying and almost trembled as she opened the divorce agreement. Just as she was about to sign, the office door opened. He is the vice president of the company. Boss Jiang, that project. Lao Lu. He was surprised to see me. Great, you're finally back. That project was giving me a headache. Hurry up. I'm not coming back to resume my job. I interrupted myself and then looked at Jiang Yang. Sign quickly, I still have to go for an interview. Jiang Yang took a deep breath and closed the agreement. I can sign, but you have to agree to one condition first. Condition? I frowned. I've already agreed to leave the house with nothing, and you still have the nerve to put forward conditions. Jiang Yang gritted her teeth. The project you agreed to earlier is very important to the company. As long as you are responsible for completing the project, I will agree to divorce and promise not to bother you again. After a pause, she continued to add. I can give you 10% of the project's profits. I nodded. Can. Having said that, there is no reason to refuse, and I really need the money. However, just after I nodded in agreement, Jiang Yang directly handed Xu Juan in. Next, Juan will serve as your assistant and help you complete the project. I looked at her calmly for a long time and smiled sarcastically. Why? You want me to help you bring someone? Jiang Yang lowered her head guiltily and stammered, You want to resign, so I have to leave someone who can take the lead in the company, right? Juan graduated from a prestigious university. As long as you don't hide your knowledge, he will definitely surpass you. I shrugged and didn't dwell on the issue any further. Xu Juan smiled at me smugly. Mr. Jiang, please give me more advice. I ignored him, took the project information and turned away. 36. In the next few days, I started working on the project. After all, I was the one who took over it, so it was basically not difficult. Xu Juan, on the other hand, was very active, busying around me, looking humble and eager to learn. Although I don't know what he is planning, I don't have any secrets to hide. It's not magnanimous, it's unnecessary. She cried pitifully and looked deeply hurt. The day of project launch soon arrived. In order to increase the company's visibility, Jiang Yang specially invited prominent figures in the business world and held a banquet. The guests who came congratulated Jiang Yang one after another and toasted her with glasses of wine. Jiang Yang also accepted everyone's offer. Soon, her cheeks flushed and she looked at me with a dazed look in her eyes. Faced with the flattery from people around her, she shook her head. This is all thanks to me, my husband. She waved at me. Hubby, come here quickly. I frowned and didn't go forward. And I found that Xu Juan, who had been standing behind me, had disappeared at some point. I had a vague feeling that something was not right. Sure enough, after Party AS representative took over the project book, his expression changed. What's wrong? Jiang Yang asked doubtfully. The Party A representative's mouth twitched, and he looked at Jiang Yang with mockery. I didn't expect that Mr. Jiang was doing something very frivolous behind the scenes. But what do you want to express by putting this kind of thing in the project book? We are here to discuss cooperation, not to admire your figure. Jiang Yang was dumbfounded. Without caring too much, she grabbed the project book and took a look at it, her face showing shock. This. Have a problem with the project book? I frowned and walked forward. I was the one who compiled this project book, so there shouldn't be any mistakes. But as soon as I took a look at it, I was stunned. The first page of the project book is a photo. The protagonists of the photo are Jiang Yang and Xu Juan. They are lying naked on the bed in an intimate and suggestive posture. Before I could figure out what was going on, Xu Juan next to me suddenly pointed at my nose with a look of shock on his face. Mr. Liu. Don't you think this behavior is too despicable? I know you want to divorce President Jiang, and you're jealous that I completed the project alone, but you can't use such dirty tricks to throw dirty water on us, right? How can she face others in the future if you do this? Jiang Yang looked at me, her eyes full of disappointment and anger. You actually, I'm really you. Of course it's him. He is the one who compiled this project book, who else could it be but him? Xu Juan glared at me, looking indignant. You are a veteran employee of the company, but you can't distinguish between public and private matters. Jiang Yang questioned me angrily. Why? You just want to get revenge on me, right? Why are you still wasting time talking to him? Xu Juan's face was full of contempt. Boss Jiang and I have an ordinary superior-subordinate relationship. It's just because you have a dirty mind that you are suspicious of me. Not only does he want a divorce, he also wants to destroy Mr. Jiang himself. He is so inhumane. Mr. Jiang is such a good woman, she must be blind to marry you. Jiang Yang couldn't bear it any longer, she pounced on me and beat my chest, but after a few hits, her eyes rolled back and she fell to the ground, covering her chest with her hands, her face full of pain. Boss Jiang. Xu Juwen rushed to support me and shouted at the security guard to kick me out. The other people at the scene also looked at me with contempt. Alas, you can only know a person's face but not his heart. Even after years of marriage, they can end up like this because of suspicion. No matter what, you shouldn't use this method to retaliate. It's too vicious. The security guard rushed over, but after meeting my cold gaze, he did not dare to take action. Xu Juwen shouted, "What are you still hesitating about? Get him out now." I sneered and looked at him as if he were a clown. In this society, it's not the one with the loudest voice who is right. You're so eager to throw dirty water on me? Are you guilty? Xu Juwen's eyes flickered. What do you mean by guilty conscience? Who else but you would have the chance to get close to the project book and do such a despicable thing? I took out my cell phone. I'm also very curious, so I installed surveillance cameras in the office in advance. Now we'll check it out to see who it is. 37. Xu Juwen panicked and rushed over to snatch my phone. I raised my foot and kicked him to the ground. With this kind of performance, even if everyone present was a fool, they would understand what was happening. It's you? Jiang Yang's eyes were red as she stared at Xu Juwen. Xu Juwen waved his hands in panic. Boss Jiang, you listen to my explanation. Jiang Yang just swung her hand and slapped him hard on the face. Throw him out. The security guard immediately lifted Xu Juwen up. His eyes were full of resentment as he looked at me, gritting his teeth. You've been on guard against me for a long time, haven't you? I smiled slightly. How could there be surveillance cameras in the office? You are the one feeling guilty. Xu Juwen was stunned. When he came to his senses, his face turned red with anger. I'm going to kill you. But the security guard next to him didn't give him a chance to struggle and threw him out by force. I couldn't help but shake my head. This is probably what is called shooting oneself in the foot. Jiang Yang looked guilty. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have doubted you. Need not. I sent her the project files. Remember to sign the divorce agreement. See you at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. My mission is accomplished, there is no need to waste time. Jiang Yang's breathing stagnated, and she was silent for a while before she nodded. Good. Jiang Yang finally agreed to divorce. I immediately asked for leave from the company. I don't know where Su Zishuan got the news from, but she came to me before leaving. Can I go with you? I shook my head. Goodbye, I'll be back soon. Su Zishuan looked into my eyes steadily for a long time before nodding. Good. On the return flight, my mood was up and down. It's not that I was feeling sentimental, but I just felt that I could finally get rid of this heavy marriage. At the Civil Affairs Bureau, the moment I saw the stamp on my certificate, I suddenly felt a lot more relaxed, as if I had thrown away a heavy shackle. At the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Jiang Yang was holding the divorce certificate with a dazed expression, as if she was unable to recover. At the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Jiang Yang was wearing a white dress, which I gave her when we first got together. She always thought it was too plain and didn't like wearing it. The reason for wearing it now is self-evident. After getting the divorce certificate, she hugged me gently. Thank you. I am sorry for you, you deserve better. After saying that, she turned and left. I glanced at her back and turned away. 38. I can accept my failure in relationships. But I won't give up on my career just because of a failed relationship. Maybe this is also the reason why Jiang Yang cheated. After Jiang Yang became successful in her career, her personality became strange. She likes the feeling of being in control. Whether it's people or things. Therefore, when Xu Juwen, who always obeyed her in everything, appeared, she would betray him immediately. After returning to the company, Su Zishuan was very happy to see me and directly arranged for the heads of various departments of the company to have a meal to celebrate. Some colleagues expressed doubts. Su Zishuan put her hands on her hips proudly. I'm in a good mood, so I want to celebrate, is that not okay? She knew she shouldn't be so obvious. But I got divorced, and she just couldn't suppress her happiness. My colleagues immediately understood. It seems that we are benefiting from Mr. Lu's help. The gossip about the two of them had already spread in the company, and there were even various different versions. Better than novels. When everyone heard this, they started to make a fuss. I quickly explained, no, it's because the previous project has made good progress, so it's worth celebrating, right, Assistant Lin? Suzishuan stuck out her tongue and said, if you say so, then so be it. I am just your assistant, how can I have the right to speak? There is nothing wrong with this statement at first glance, but to colleagues it sounds like an obedient wife agreeing with her husband. The booing got louder. I just feel overwhelmed. Has this girl always been so fierce? 39. Fortunately, everyone didn't continue to talk about this topic. At the party table, everyone came up to toast me one by one, as if they had discussed it beforehand. Considering that everyone here is considered a senior, I couldn't refuse. Soon, I felt dizzy. Suzishuan sat next to me, smiling but not saying a word. After the dinner, I was a little unsteady when I walked. Suzishuan supported me, with struggle and hesitation in her eyes. Brother Ziming, you've drunk too much. As she spoke, she signaled with her eyes for the others to go first. I didn't say anything, just stared at her face. Suzishuan's breathing became a little rapid and she quickly turned her head away. After helping me into the car, Suzishuan was about to stand up when I suddenly grabbed her arm. She lost her balance and fell, landing on top of me. Their mouths accidentally touched each other. Separate at the first touch. Suzishuan was stunned, came to her senses, and stood up in a panic. Her cheeks blushed and she bit her lip as she looked at me who was drowsy in the car. She took me home. The next morning, I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. It took me a long time to come out of the hangover state and stand up, holding my forehead with my hand. My head is still a little dizzy. I rubbed my swollen temples and was about to look around when my fingertips suddenly touched something soft. When I turned my head, I was stunned. Beside me, Suzishuan was lying naked in the quilt, with tears in the corners of her eyes. I sat up as if I had been electrocuted, only to find that I was also naked. What happened is self-evident. Suzishuan had actually woken up a long time ago. At this moment, he is squinting his eyes and observing my reaction. Seeing the latter's nervous face, she couldn't help laughing in her heart, slowly opened her eyes, and pretended that she had just woken up. Brother Ziming, are you awake? I had a complicated expression. We last night. I volunteered. Suzishuan interrupted me, her cheeks blushing. I took off my clothes last night, and I voluntarily had sex with you. Even though I already knew what had happened, I still felt bitter when I heard Suzishuan say it herself. I'm sorry, I drank too much last night. It's okay. Suzishuan said softly. I said, I volunteered. 40. Suzishuan looked up and looked at me. I like you, so when you press on me, I don't want to resist. I want to give all of myself to you. My eyes widened. I really can't remember anything about last night. But the two of them were indeed lying together naked. This is an indisputable fact. I believe I can resist temptation when I am sober. But I don't believe that my body would have no reaction when faced with teasing. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Suzishuan asked cautiously, are you angry? Angry? I shook my head. No, I just feel sorry for you. It's okay, I don't think. Suzishuan got up and put on her clothes. Wait a minute, I'll go make some hangover soup. Need not. I was about to stop him, but I didn't notice the stool at my feet, and I fell forward uncontrollably. Suzishuan screamed and rushed over. Ouch! The two fell together. I stood up quickly, but Suzishuan fell to the ground with a pale face and clenched teeth. Are you okay? I hurried to help her up, but as soon as I moved, Suzishuan let out a groan of pain. I didn't dare to delay and quickly called the emergency number. In the ambulance, Suzishuan was comforting in a relaxed manner. Please, it's my honor to be thrown into the hospital by my own boss. I really couldn't laugh and could only hold her hand gently. When I arrived at the hospital, I saw a familiar figure. Xu Juwen. I stood at the door of the hospital, holding my cell phone, seemingly questioning something loudly. What do you mean? I know I shouldn't go through your things, but why did you make an appointment for an abortion? Are you really going to do this to me, sister? When I heard the word sister, I immediately understood. It seems that he had a falling out with Jiang Yang. But I ignored it, pretended not to see it, and followed the medical staff away. But Xu Juwen noticed me. Lu Ziming. She strode over. Stop. 41. I frowned, turned around, and said calmly, "What do you want?" Xu Juwen gritted his teeth, his eyes full of anger and hostility. "You've already divorced Yang Yang, why are you still pestering her?" I raised my eyebrows. I didn't quite understand why a mistress could be so arrogant in front of the former wife. Is this society crazy? I don't have time for her. I was too lazy to talk nonsense, but Xu Juwen just wouldn't give in. If it weren't for you, why would she abort our child? That was the fruit of our love, but because of you, it won't even have a chance to be born. I roared and accused angrily. It seemed like I was the culprit who destroyed their marriage. Passers-by around me also cast unfriendly glances at me. I didn't want to get entangled, but since the other party insisted on making things difficult for me, I'm not a good-tempered person. Xu Juwen, when you were with Jiang Yang, didn't you know that she had a husband? Even if you didn't know it at the time, you must have known it in the past 2 years, right? But not only did you not break up with her, you actually enjoyed it and even got her pregnant. What qualifications do you have to question me, your original wife? Why? You made my ex-wife pregnant with your child, and I am the one who is wronging you, right? Now, it was Xu Juwen's turn to be despised by everyone. Xu Juwen looked unhappy, panting and arguing, "You are talking nonsense. Yang Yang and I are truly in love, and people like you who are not loved are the third party." I don't even need to refute such explosive remarks. The people around me who are just watching the show are the first to be unhappy. Young people nowadays have no shame at all, destroying other people's families and feeling justified in doing so. That's right, what is true love? Destroying someone else's marriage is true love. It's really embarrassing for men. It's this kind of scum that makes the current social atmosphere a mess. Xu Juwen's face turned pale and he couldn't even utter a word of rebuttal. I have no comment on this. At first, I didn't think about blaming Xu Juwen from a moral perspective. It was Jiang Yang who was unfaithful to her husband. A woman like her who is both rich and pretty can make a boy like Xu Juwen fall in love with her just by beckoning her. So, in a sense, Xu Juwen is also one of the victims. I didn't really want to cause trouble for him. The reason this situation happened was that he came here to cause trouble. Seeing that more and more people were gathering around, I was ready to leave, but Xu Juwen still didn't want to let me go. It's all because of you? Otherwise, how could I become a mistress? I just showed up a little later than you. 42. I almost laughed out of anger. This kind of statement is shameless enough, so shameless that I can't even find any words to refute it. I raised my leg to leave, but Xu Juwen rushed over and grabbed me like a madman. Don't leave. Go and tell Yang Yang to marry me and not to abort our child, otherwise I will keep pestering you. I frowned and tried to shake off, but Xu Juwen held on tightly and showed no intention of letting go. My face turned cold. My patience is limited, let go. Impossible. Xu Juwen's face looked ferocious. Call Yang Yang right now, or we'll just keep wasting time today. I think you have a problem with your brain. I got angry and kicked Xu Juwen in the stomach. After the latter let go in pain, I warned him coldly. Don't mess with me again. Next time I will call the police. Do you think Jiang Yang will accept someone who is in jail? I wasn't trying to scare him. Given Jiang Yang's current identity and status, she would definitely not accept that her future partner has a criminal record. Xu Juwen was stunned. He stood there, gritting his teeth, for a long time before he raised his head, his eyes full of pleading. Even if you help me once for the sake of the child, I promise I will never come to you again. I turned away with a blank expression. The crowd watching also felt bored, and after cursing a few times, they dispersed. Xu Juwen stood there, feeling a little helpless. He was more afraid of losing Jiang Yang, his source of funds, than losing his own child. It is easy to go from simplicity to luxury, but it is difficult to go from luxury to frugality. He was used to a life of luxury, and he couldn't accept going back to the life of an ordinary person. When I returned to the hospital, Su Zishuan had already been taken to the ward. Seeing that I looked a little off, she asked with concern, "What's wrong?" I smiled to show that I was okay. Then he picked up the lunch box beside him. This is what I just bought outside. After all, Su Zishuan hasn't had a single drink of water after all this trouble. Want me to feed you? What else? Su Zishuan raised her plastered hand. You have to take responsibility to the end. 43. I shrugged and didn't refuse. But this feeling made me feel a little awkward, especially when Su Zishuan deliberately grinned and bit the chopsticks and refused to let go. If you keep doing this, I won't feed you. I deliberately put on a sullen face. Su Zishuan quickly spit out the chopsticks. I'm sorry, I just don't want you to be so embarrassed. I paused, feeling guilty. After all, Su Zishuan was injured because of me. He was just feeding her a meal, but he was so timid. He's not like a man at all. Sorry, it's my problem. I adjusted my mindset, picked up the food with chopsticks and handed it to Su Zishuan's mouth. The latter did not move, but just stared at me. Don't you like me? Su Zishuan's eyes were slightly red. She has always been lively and cheerful, but this is the first time she has shown such an aggrieved expression. I didn't know what to say for a moment. But I know that saying anything that hurts the other person now is a shameless act. Seeing me hesitating, a trace of disappointment flashed in Su Zishuan's eyes. But soon, she smiled. It's okay. I like you. It's my own business. I shouldn't put pressure on you. It was a bright smile, but it made my heart ache slightly, and even my hands were shaking slightly. Helpless, I could only quickly change the subject. Eat quickly, it's getting cold. Su Zishuan nodded obediently. But in my mind I was thinking about how to take down this stubborn donkey. According to the doctor, Su Zishuan needs to be hospitalized for observation for a period of time. Naturally, I became the one who accompanied him. But where to sleep became a problem. There is a bed for accompanying patients in the hospital ward, but I am too tall to squeeze in. Su Zishuan felt a little distressed when she saw this. How about you come over to my place and I'll sleep over there? I refused immediately. How can a patient be allowed to sleep on a care bed while the caregiver sleeps on his own bed? That's the opposite of Qiangang. You can't be so uncomfortable every day. It's not good for your waist. Su Zishuan bit her lip and said, why don't you go back? I can do it myself. Just come back during the day. I still refuse. I can't leave you alone in the hospital. That. Su Zishuan moved to the side. You're sleeping with me. 44. Her cheeks were abnormally flushed, matching her somewhat sickly temperament. It's simply tempting people to commit a crime. But his eyes were very serious, and there was no intention of joking at all. This is not good. Su Zishuan curled her lips. Then you choose, either go back or sleep with me. I'd better sleep in the accompanying bed. No. I feel a little helpless. After a long time, he nodded. The hospital bed is much wider than the accompanying bed. But it was not enough to accommodate two people. As soon as I got on, the two of us were almost pressed tightly together. Almost subconsciously, I moved to the side. Su Zishuan covered her mouth and laughed. If you move any further, you will fall down. My back stiffened, and I coughed dryly before speaking. It's okay, this bed is quite big. I don't have much confidence in what I say. After all, my body is usually suspended in the air. At this moment, Su Zishuan suddenly pulled my body hard with her healthy hand. Just come and sleep over here. It's not like you haven't slept before. There was a hint of coquettishness in her voice, and I could only feel my heart beating faster. But he was worried that Su Zishuan's hand would be injured again, so he could only cooperate and lie down inside. The lights went out, and in the darkness, the two could only hear each other's breathing. Su Zishuan suddenly took my hand, put it under her head, and said contentedly, let's sleep. My body was stiff and I dared not move, for fear of hurting Su Zishuan. But in the second half of the night, I couldn't control my sleepiness and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, I felt a slight itching in my nose. I raised my hand and scratched it, ignoring it. But soon, the itchy feeling came again, accompanied by a low laugh. I opened my eyes and saw Su Zishuan standing in front of me, scratching her nose with the ends of her hair. Seeing me wake up, Su Zishuan hurriedly threw away her hair and lowered her head guiltily. After secretly cursing myself for being so sleepy, I stood up and said apologetically, I'm sorry. It's okay, why apologize? Su Zishuan smiled and shook her head. I want to thank you for last night. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have slept so comfortably. 45. My face turned red, I coughed a few times, and didn't respond. With such a reaction, Su Zishuan naturally burst into laughter like a silver bell. I fled in panic and bought breakfast downstairs before returning. The time in the hospital passed quickly and the two of them hardly communicated with each other. Apart from chatting during meals, Su Zishuan spent most of her time playing games on her phone out of boredom. I still admire him for this. Play games with one hand. What kind of electronic spirit is this? In the evening, Su Zishuan suddenly raised a tricky question. I want to take a shower. I was dumbfounded. Her hand was still in a cast, so it was definitely impossible for her to bathe herself. But you can't wash it for her yourself, right? But Su Zishuan blinked as if on purpose. Can you help me? I almost refused immediately. This is not a meal and a change of clothes. It's time to take a bath. The kind without clothes. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Su Zishuan urged, Hey, stop wasting time, it's not like you haven't seen it before. My face turned red, but I finally nodded in agreement. In the bathroom, I was at a loss. But this is my own fault, and I have to pay for it myself. Help me take off my clothes. Su Zishuan urged. I took a deep breath and unbuttoned my hospital gown. I have to say that Su Zishuan has developed very well. The cleavage on her chest is bottomless, while her waist is slender without a trace of fat. I felt my body starting to get hot. I quickly looked away. Seeing me like this, Su Zishuan's eyes flashed with cunning. Finally, when taking off her underwear, Su Zishuan herself began to feel shy. I'll take care of the underwear myself. You wait for me outside. I breathed a sigh of relief and quickly escaped. Listening to the sound of water running in the bathroom, I stroked my violently beating chest and couldn't help but scold myself for being useless. The girls are all so confident, so why should I be shy? But not long after, Su Zishuan's voice suddenly came from the bathroom. I accidentally got my hospital gown wet. Can you help me get a new one? 46. I didn't think much about it at first, until I stood at the bathroom door holding my new hospital gown, and I was a little dumbfounded. How should I give it to her? I'll put it at the door for you. The bathroom door opened a crack, and a steaming, snow-white hand stretched out. Give it to me. I stepped forward, even though I tried to look away. But for a moment, I still saw the whiteness inside through the crack in the door. Hurry up and give it to me. Have you seen enough? Su Zishuan's teasing words brought me back to my senses and I quickly handed the clothes in. After a while, Su Zishuan put on a hospital gown, revealing her snow-white chest. Help me button it up. I walked forward, moving cautiously, afraid to accidentally touch the towering breasts of hers. Seeing how nervous I was, Su Zishuan couldn't help but tease me. Brother Zimming, you are still shy at this age. I became even more nervous and rolled my eyes at her. This has nothing to do with age. Huh? You're still angry after I showed you everything. Su Zishuan's smile became even more mischievous. This also made me a little angry, and I said unhappily, I can see it but I can't touch it, it's strange that I'm not angry. Su Zishuan blushed, but she straightened her chest and said stubbornly, then you touch it. Of course I couldn't really do it. But Su Zishuan took a step forward. Caught off guard, the back of my hand still touched that amazing softness. I withdrew my hand as if I had been electrocuted. There was disappointment in Su Zishuan's eyes. Brother Zimming, you're divorced, and you're still not willing to consider me. But I just got divorced. I was about to explain when Su Zishuan suddenly took a step forward, stood on tiptoe, and kissed my lips. I subconsciously wanted to push her away, but I was afraid of hurting her, so I could only stand there stupidly. Su Zishuan's lips were cool and soft. She kissed him passionately, murmuring softly, Brother Zimming, please stop pushing me away. I don't want to miss it again. I suddenly felt a little confused. This kind of ambiguous atmosphere can easily make people lose their minds. So when Su Zishuan asked, will you be my man, I nodded unconsciously. When I came to my senses, I felt excited and relieved at the same time. Fine. My failed marriage did not make me lose the ability to love. 47. Time passes like water. After the divorce, Jiang never appeared again. I gradually forgot about her. My relationship with Su Zishuan progressed very quickly. She is a very good girl. She was not in a hurry to ask for a status, but took care of me and accompanied me silently. This kind of peaceful life makes me feel at ease. I took her traveling around to see the scenery she had never seen before. Enjoy the feeling of being in love. Just as we decided on a new destination, Jiang Yang was sitting alone in the office looking through the documents in her hand. The sunlight shone on her face, but could not dispel the gloom between her brows. The secretary knocked on the door and reported quietly, "Mr. Jiang, we have found several people who meet the requirements you are looking for. Come in." Jiang Yang didn't even raise her head. The secretary then pushed the door open, put the documents down, and stood quietly aside. Everyone knows that this boss is moody. The previous assistant was fired by her for no reason and she also issued a ban. It was so miserable. Jiang Yang got the information, but she had no interest in it. She picked up a cigarette and lit it. She used to hate smoking. But she didn't know when she became addicted to smoking. Apart from this, she couldn't think of any other way to relieve her depression. After the divorce, she began to feel empty inside. After the initial despair, she did not bother Lu Ziming, but instead looked around for someone of the opposite sex who was similar to him and of similar age. Many people who knew her thought that she could not accept the reality of divorce, so she wanted to find a substitute for comfort. But even if someone who met the requirements appeared, she didn't make too many close friends with him. It seemed like it was just to kill time. Gradually, she began to stay up late frequently, and even when she woke up, her condition was not normal. The number of cigarettes I smoked a day went from 1 pack to 2 packs. Her friends tried to advise her, but she simply wouldn't listen. She even wondered, if she died, would Lu Ziming come back to see her? My friends couldn't stand it anymore and suggested contacting Lu Ziming. But Jiang Yang shook her head and refused. She knew very well that everything that happened now was all her own fault. If she hadn't done that in the first place, nothing would have turned out like this. 48. It is said that time is the best medicine. On New Year's Day a year later, Jiang Yang stepped into the room where Lu Ziming had previously lived for the first time. Because of her instructions, the room was always cleaned by someone. Even if it is just a small pendant, it has never deviated from its original position. The room still retained traces of the past, as if Lu Ziming had never left. Jiang Yang picked up the broom and cleaned the room herself. Just then, a letter arrived at the door. Jiang Yang didn't care at first, but when she saw the sender, her pupils contracted slightly. The content of the letter was very simple, just a short sentence. But Jiang Yang just stood there stupidly, as if she had lost all her strength. The housekeeper came over and saw her standing at the door, so he didn't dare to disturb her. It was not until she came to her senses that she asked cautiously, "Mr. Jiang, are you okay?" Jiang Yang shook her head, then gently put away the letter paper and photos in her hands, as if she was afraid of damaging them. The photo is slightly tilted, and from the butler's angle, the protagonist can be clearly seen. Lu Ziming and Su Zixuan, wearing couple outfits, stood together closely, with fireworks and the atmosphere of spring behind them. The housekeeper had also heard of the story of Jiang Yang and Lu Ziming, and when he saw this photo, he became a little nervous. But Jiang Yang's condition is very normal. He is doing very well. That girl loves him very much. They are getting married. She seemed to be telling something, or warning herself. Lu Ziming was living a good life and didn't need her to disturb him. A year has passed, and she still thought she had really gotten over it. As if she had lost all her strength, Liu Ruyan stretched out her hands to support the edge of the table and sat stiffly on the sofa. She looked at Lu Ziming's photo and wanted to smile, but she couldn't do it. Finally, she just raised her hands to cover her face, her shoulders shaking slightly. The butler left quietly. Jiang Yang sat there for a long time, and time gradually became blurred. She seemed to see Lu Ziming pushing the door in and giving her a gentle smile. But when I reached out my hand, I realized that everything was just an illusion. The content of the letter is simple. Stop torturing yourself, live a good life, and have a happy new year. After an unknown amount of time, Jiang Yang took out a pen and paper and wrote a simple reply. Happy wedding, Lu Ziming.